Hello, everyone, and welcome back to um Fleets. Well, no, not welcome back to. Welcome to Fleets Focus Discussions. Um, this is, like I said last time, it's something a little bit different compared to what we normally do. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at the Red Fleet timeline. In particular, we're going to be looking at basically what happened before, what would I do differently, and basically look at it basically and figure out, well, what would I do differently compared to well, all the rest of it.
Good question.
Yes.
How prevalent is Talos in this timeline?
Well, this is the thing. We're gonna go through what was and then have a look at what should be instead, given all that we know now compared to what we knew then. But we'll get to that. But very quickly, before we do get to that, we do have to answer, as per protocol, we do have to answer the Patreon questions before we actually move into today's topic. So the question is actually related to what we are currently discussing. So it is from Timu Locker, who asks, since we're in the Red Fleet timeline, where is Uncle Joe? Is Lenin still in power? As in the original timeline, it's post-war, so yep, it's all the leaders are still the same. Nothing has changed on that front. Yeah. Nothing has changed on that front at all. So, it's important to bear in mind...
Yeah, well, but no. Quick thing. Doesn't Stalin live longer in the timeline?
No, he doesn't.
Because I thought that was the catalyst, because the Soviets actually ended up completing the Stalingrads.
No, the catalyst was a two-pronged...
Which get cancelled by Khrushchev.
No, the catalysts of the two-pronged... The catalyst of the two-pronged things were both the Soviets capture Graf Zeppelin with their engines intact, and they capture and they build Sovietsky Soyuz to a lot more completion than she was historically built to. Those two were the two catalysts for the whole timeline. Which, to be fair, those two were not really unrealistic in and of themselves. But without further ado, let's actually poke the timeline itself. So, first thing we need to do is we need to crack open the... Yep. And there we are. So we're looking at the actual Red Fleet timeline. So, this was Graf Zeppelin. Now, I have no problems with Graf Zeppelin basically, the early part of the timeline is really quite simple in terms of the ships that we actually worked up for the Soviets. No problems there at all. And the only real problems that we get into, really, is when it comes to what the Americans do early in the timeline, which is they wrap up the 4 Iowas carefully and run the South Dakotas and North Carolinas into the ground. That's... Knowing what I know now, that's aggressively silly. That's not what would happen at all in any way. That's just not what would happen. Especially given how long the some of the not built Des Moines and not built Iowas stayed on the stocks for, while the US decided what to do with them. As soon as it becomes clear that Sovietsky Soyuz will be finished and Graf Zeppelin will be finished, and also that the Russians are going to get 6 Stalingrads, not only are you probably going to see all 6 Iowas built, you're probably going to see the build out of Des Moines increased. Probably to 6. The other thing that I was thinking,
probably not, because when are they finishing Sovietsky Soyuz?
She finishes in 51, but they resume construction on Sovietsky Soyuz in 46, Graf Zeppelin in 47, and the Stalingrads are laid down in 49.
I just put something forward that's pretty cursed that they might do instead.
Okay, but the whole point was trying to rationalize things and not make it more cursed. It was already cursed enough as it was. But
Yeah,
on.
but so that's rationalized.
Right.
So you know the US had the plans to convert the Des Moines hulls to missile cruisers.
Yes, but that was much further down the line, and that's...
It comes in 52 when the specs for Talos is released.
Yeah, but you're kind of missing the forest for the trees here.
No, I just hear me out quickly. You know the battle carrier idea?
Yes.
A hybrid of gun and missile cruiser.
Why?
Because the missile is huge for air defense. But if your enemy is still running around with gun-based surface combatants, you need gun-based surface combatants.
Yeah, so why would
and the 8-inch auto-loaders, even in 2 turrets, is more than enough to deal with anything on the seas.
No, it's not. If you're gonna send a Des Moines against the Stalingrad, you want all 3 turrets. And quite frankly, again, if you're retaining these ships for their ability as surface gun combatants, why are you impinging on that capability? There are other ships you can convert into that quasi-gun missile role, if that's what you want. I get where you're coming from, but why would you convert your most capable gun combatants, either the Iowas or the Des Moines, by reducing their ability to fight in the role you've retained them for, to be able to partially fulfill a role that you can take other less capable gun combatants or build new ships to fulfill instead, rather than compromising a needed capability that that the US Navy has decided it needs? Otherwise, it wouldn't be building the Iowas out to 6 ships, and it wouldn't be probably building more Des Moines. Why would you then compromise the ability of those ships to do the job you've built them to do, when you can literally get other platforms to carry Talos or Terrier? You don't need to compromise your gun-based platforms and your best gun-based platforms.
Because in this period, the only ships that they think they can actually carry Talos is the converted Baltimores or the Des Moines hulls.
No.
Or bigger.
No.
And two, the Des Moines wouldn't exist to counter the Stalingrads. That would be the Alaskas and the Iowa's job.
Well, the Alaskas just...
the Des Moines would be against the... It would be against the Soviet Sverdlovs.
Again.
And 2 turrets and Talos is enough to bushwhack the hell out of any Sverdi that comes running.
You've already shot yourself down with your own bloody explanation. Why would you refit the very capable Des Moines when, if you want to have a missile heavy cruiser hybrid, the Baltimores are right there?
Because the Baltimores make for horrible Talos cruisers.
Yeah, but the Des Moines will not.
They're too small.
Quite frankly, again, Foxy, you've not said... again, if you want a Talos capable ship, don't sacrifice your best gun cruiser, to get it. Either build a new ship or convert something else. Because that's just a really bad idea. Also, the Alaskas are not going to be retained at all. You've got 6 Iowas. The hell do you need Alaskas for?
Because the Alaskas make up, if you're not getting anything up, make up useful mass if you've got a ship that's actually in their ballpark to fight.
Not really. They cost 80% of the cost to run of an Iowa, which you now have 6 of. The US has 6. The US has 6 battle cruisers total. You have 6
Yeah.
fast battleships. You have the Des Moines to deal with the cruisers. What's the point of keeping the Alaskas around? There is no point.
Because what happens if your reserve? Because the Alaskas. So say I don't know. You got the basic 4. Because on average, you're gonna have 2 Alaskas in refit or mothball.
Well, they're all
They're
both,
Iowas.
but well, sorry, yeah, well, yes,
Yeah.
sure.
So and as soon as a war starts, the Alaskas are gonna get hit. They're not the Alaskas. The Iowas are gonna get hit. So then you're down to, assuming 1 gets hit, you're now down to 3. And
Okay.
at that point, you're looking at the Iowas getting jumped and ganked.
Okay, so what makes you assume the Soviets don't have the same calculus on the other end? Why are you applying this calculus of having the Iowas having this issue and this problem of capability, aka you need these extra ships, when the Soviets also have 6? It's an even matchup. You don't need these extra Alaskas. They're just wasted money.
Yeah, but because of American posture in the Cold War, that tended to be a lot more defensive and reactive for a war in Europe. Whereas the Soviet, with the assumption on both sides that the Soviets would be the one to kick it off.
No, both sides. No.
So the Soviet.
I'm gonna push back on that. The Soviets the assumption went both ways. The Soviets always expected that any sign of weakness would mean the capitalist powers would invade them for a war of liberation, and vice versa. This wasn't a one-way thing.
But it was also assumed that because of the Soviets' overwhelming material superiority in Europe, that unless something severe happened to the Soviet Union, or the Americans resorted to a nuclear first strike, that would not happen. And so you get this shift of, so the Soviets could surge while the US would be surging in reaction.
That's not,
which means that you need more balls.
No, that's not how that works at all. That's not how that works in reality, historically, or with actual Soviet doctrine. At all.
It is from what I've been reading of it.
That's not what I've read. If you look at Soviet heavy unit readiness, Sverdlovs, the Karas, the large frigates, Krestas, Sovremenis, Kirovs, Slavas when they come in, Kievs, Moskvas. If you look at their readiness rates compared to US large combatants, they're about the same.
Yeah. But they're about the same. Yeah. But from what I read, the Soviets are making the assumption that when they're ready to push forward, they will be able to surge and have all of them ready for combat.
Well, yeah, but that's going to be noticed. Reconnaissance satellites and reconnaissance flights are a thing, and you can't exactly hide you're getting a ship ready for action, which therefore means the US could also do the same. So again, I don't see why you need to less.
Because the Soviets also basically did baiting operations where they would make it look like they were ready to surge, so the US would respond when they weren't actually.
Okay.
To try and make it that the Americans wouldn't react quickly when they actually surged.
I don't. Again, these aren't really. These aren't making up for the fact that you're going to have to pay the cost of 2 additional Iowas to get not 2 additional Iowas. You're getting far less capability and far less longevity.
But the actual cost of building them and the actual major cost has already been paid.
Gunnery officer, we're not doing normal questions today. That's on Friday. It's not a Ramblings. The title is not Fleet's Random Ramblings. Questions about what we're discussing only, please. They won't be being retained after this. They should be related to what we're currently discussing at that moment, rather than... Oh yeah, there shouldn't also be general questions. They should also be specifically related to what we're discussing at the moment, rather than...
Yes, please do try and keep the questions relevant to the current topic.
Oh, why are we getting a black... Oh, yeah. Sorry about that, folks. I will... Actually, no, I'm going to see if I can... I'm just going to shut that down for a minute, because it doesn't seem to be working quite as I'd like it to. See if I can bring the pictures up the old-fashioned way. But anyway, so, yeah. So my first thing would be... You've got 6 Iowas. You've also got extra capability in the form of that surge capability can come at least at first from NATO allies. You've got France and Britain for the early part of the Cold War period, while you're building up the missile capability to, quite frankly, make the Soviet heavy combatants obsolete. Talos. You've got Vanguard and Jean Bar there to act as your safety net. You don't need the Alaskas.
I'd argue you still need the Alaskas.
Not really. The use case of them is already sketchy at best. But
yeah, Sverdlovsk bushwhacking a Stalingrad.
That's what the Des Moines are there for. The Des Moines can easily smack a Sverdlov, and honestly, I'd give them even odds against a Stalingrad, given the Stalingrad's anemic armor protection.
Yeah, I would say they're protected from 8-inch, though. That's the thing. They are protected from those 8-inch.
Not with the super heavy shells.
Yeah, but only at relatively close ranges.
But also,
and we're talking about full radar directed fire control here.
They are, but it's also hard for us. I could also, the reason I still give it an edge case is because that is an awful lot of 8-inch shells, and that's an awful lot of superstructure, and that's an awful lot of things that can go horrifically wrong before the Stalingrad finds the range.
Yeah, but it's also the Stalingrads are going to have radar directed fire control themselves.
It is, but
they've got. I've got to give it to them. They have very high velocity guns for what they are.
This is why I say
it's a longer effective range.
This is why I say with a Des Moines versus a Stalingrad, it's the Stalingrad's fight to lose. But if the Stalingrad chooses to push it, the Des Moines absolutely can, if well captained, put the Stalingrad down. The reason you have the Iowas is that it's a wipe. The problem with the Alaskas is that that's just a fair fight. If a Des Moines gets you a mostly fair fight, and all an Alaska gets you compared to, instead of an Iowa, which is a smackdown, all an Alaska gets you over Des Moines for a significantly increased crew and maintenance cost is a fair fight, then I question why we are retaining 2 ships that don't really have a role to play.
Because damage absorption and loss absorption.
Again, we have 6...
Because if an Iowa or 2 goes down due to air attack from, say, P5s and P50s in this period, would you rather have a less capable surface combatant that you've got in reserve, or no surface combatant?
Given that I would expect that we would be trading in return, I would say that we probably are. And again, we do have the South Dakotas and the North Carolinas in reserve. They haven't been... I'm not scrapping them completely.
Yeah, but they're also...
They're slower.
War-worn.
They are war-worn and they are slower, but there's a reason why they were retained for as long as they were. And we have 6 Iowas now.
Yeah,
like, this is the thing. It's...
I get being paranoid, but loss absorption...
You are being overly paranoid. You're not thinking like... You're thinking like someone who wants the absolute best case scenario. I'm thinking like an actual SecNav who's going, I have a limited amount of budget. What's the acceptable minimum I can get away with? Would I love to also retain the Alaskas and have the Des Moines? Yes, of course I would. But I have to look at this from the reality of what is actually practicable and what the US might reasonably get away with. No, the bot is not on. I am just, because we're doing this as a poignant questions, I'll just be picking them straight up from YouTube chat. In regards to the Worcesters, the Worcesters aren't really changed by Red Fleet timeline. The question that they were an answer to, the US has already decided to solve with the missile rather than the gun. At least, primarily the long-range arc of AA defense. The US has decided by this point to solve with the missile, not the gun. And is working towards that. So there's no reason for an expanded build-out of the Worcesters. So yeah, I'm saying you get... I'm just going to check the Des Moines quickly, because I want to check how many keels were actually laid. Because I know how many eyes we're going to get. We're going to get 6. Probably with the last 2 to a slightly revised design.
Are we going to get the cursed Iowas, though?
No, they will be completed. Since the design will be... Yes, but by revised, I mean you're probably going to see 5-inch 54s rather than 38s. And 3-inch from the start. But that's basically it. We're not talking mega revisions here.
So we're not going to get BBM or BBX.
No.
Damn it.
Okay, so when were they laid down? Okay,
Why can't we have BBX?
Okay, so we're only going to get 4 Des Moines because the only one that was laid down apart from the 3 we actually got was Dallas.
Yeah, so
that's respectable. That's easily, that gives you enough Des Moines to go. Plus the Baltimores, that some of whom are not Oregon City, and the Baltimores, especially the Oregon Cities. Okay, the Oregon Cities are basically ideal for Talos conversion because they were very good ships once converted. I think, or were they converted?
What we are?
Albany and I forget. Let's have a look. So Albany was converted into a massive missile cruiser.
Yeah, but she's a Baltimore. They're a mixture of Baltimore and Oregon cities.
Oh yeah, the Albanys were the split because two of the yeah. So, but that's
Albany
fine.
was the Oregon City, Chicago was a Baltimore, and Columbus was a Baltimore.
Jiminy Christmas. I mean, still, honestly...
Albany wasn't disposed of until 1980.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. The Albanys are going to be the real step change. Because the Albanys, despite being not ideal, they are stable enough that is just goodbye Stalingrad. Do not pass go. Do not approach the carrier. Do not fuck with us. You're doing raging salvos with 12-inch guns. That's cute. Unleash 4 Taloses from the rails.
So there was an anti-shipping dedicated larger version of Talos that was developed. That was proposed for anti-shipping duties.
They were proposing it, but then they literally realized that the dual purpose.
Never got.
Yeah, because they literally looked at the dual purpose version of Talos and went, do we really need to expand this? It's already good enough.
No, that was only in the 70s with the Talos, with the standardization of Talos with the Talos G. They were looking for a dedicated anti-shipping missile based off Talos in the late 50s and 60s.
I mean, I suppose you could.
The proposal for the ships, it was designed for a minimum of 30,000 tons.
I mean, this does bring me into something that. When did you say that was, Foxo? When were they considering those missiles?
Joint development with Talos A.
Okay, park that thought. We will come back to that because I don't want to jump ahead from where we are. We'll come back to that. Park that thought. We'll come back to that. So, what stops the Red Fleet timeline US using the Alaskas as guided missile and command ships and the helicopter carrier conversion? Well, I can answer the second one first. The North Carolinas are worn out from the war, and the cost of doing that makes no sense. You literally have Independence class for days. You have all of the light carriers you could ever want to use as helicopter carriers. Especially, and then when you want to have
use the
bigger
Essex class for
yeah,
it.
exactly. It was like you've got so many carriers. Why would you need to drag a battleship out that's already worn out and convert it into a? But to answer
That's basically like asking to pay more bills.
Yeah, but to answer the first bit, basically, when the Soviets in Red Fleet timeline are restarting construction on these things, the missiles that you would need to make that Alaska missile conversion worthwhile aren't there yet. And by this point, you've got all 6 Iowas in. And you've got 6 Iowas. And you've probably got the conversions in hand to deal with getting things like the Albanys, which are dedicated, admittedly conversions, but they're dedicated guided missile cruisers. And again, you've still not solved the problem of these ships still cost nearly as much to maintain and crew as an Iowa. So, and even if we convert them fully, they'll probably have not much more missiles than 1.5 Albanys, while probably still costing more to run than 2 Albanys. So what's the point there? And if you build them half and half as gun and missile combatants, you've degraded their capability in both, while still retaining the cost to run. This is the problem. Conversions sound nice, but they've got to have a reason for existing. And for the US, the Albanys exist because it's a safe bet to try out your new systems and the idea of a full guided missile cruiser without building a keel-up design. Same thing with a lot of other US conversions. And it's a safe bet because they don't cost too much because they're not full-on capital ships, which the US were considering at the time. They want to test if you need a full-on capital ship to carry these systems. Turns out you don't. You can get away with having a cruiser or smaller.
Well, what's some of them?
Yeah, but the point I'm making is there's no real reason to retain the Alaskas. In fact, given what I'm thinking about, I don't even know if the Red Fleet timeline, as it stands with them being sold off to the Netherlands, Turkey, and France, would actually happen. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
Because I still think there is a use case for them, because yes, they've got a higher maintenance overhead, but the majority of the cost of them has already been paid for building them.
The problem is even with the Soviets rebuilding their fleet, we're still in the US drawdown period between the end of World War II and Korea.
Yeah.
And getting 6 Iowas gives you 6 fast capital ships that are infinitely more capable than anything Russia is building right now. The Stalingrads or the Soyuz. The 2 Alaskas, even though they are built, in the period where you're drawing down, the Soviets have 7 combatants. You have 6 Iowas. The British have Vanguard, and the French have Jean Bart and Richelieu. NATO as a whole now outnumbers the Russians. And every single one of those NATO capital ships is a full-on fast battleship. Whereas the Russians have 1 16-inch 28-knotter and 6 12-inch battle cruisers. At that point, the calculus for America basically... and you know, the Americans have this tiny thing called a massive fuck-off carrier fleet as well. And the Russians have Graf Zeppelinski. Yeah.
That's the other real thing, is the sub-numbers. You know, there's a reason the British keep some T-boats around as long as they do. Literally because those things are capital ship killers. Same as on the American boats.
Yeah, I am being the most brutal I can be here. I'm allowing basically no. I'm allowing.
Just pulling the dog back.
It's all right.
Back. Here you go.
I'm coming at this from a as grounded as I can possibly be, and I'm really trying to pick this apart and pick away all of the problems and issues with it from knowing what I know now. And unfortunately, I just can't see that there's nothing. Yes, there are the cases you've described, Foxo, but again, I kind of just come back to, if you present that to the US Congress, they'll go, we have 6 Iowas. Our allies have 2 extra fast battleships. Why do we need the Alaskas again?
I think you're putting, especially in the very early Cold War, too much stock on the whole ally thing. Where
To be fair, that's me being generous to the.
NATO is very shaky
I mean, that's me
at
being.
this point.
I mean, to be fair, that's me just considering service combatants. I mean, even if I take NATO out, the US would be happy to go 6 Iowas versus 1 Soyuz and 6 Stalingrads. The US Navy would prefer to have more than their opponent, but they kind of have the big equalizer in the room, which is the US carrier fleet. And as long as those are, and they also have the 4 Des Moines as well, which is, Des Moines versus Stalingrad isn't great, but it's a closer fight than the Russians would like it to be.
And it'd probably be a pair of Des Moines versus per Stalingrad, because of course you have the 6 Iowas, etc., and the other things, so they'd be probably backing them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
and you've got all
the issue with the carriers is that you're going to be operating against land-based aviation, and
not as much in this period as they haven't really built the airfields.
Yeah,
we're talking about the initial period after World War II. They haven't really got the airfields they'll have later. They get the airfields, and that land-based aviation becomes a major part of the Soviet fleet. But it takes a while for them to build the infrastructure so they can really do that.
I'm looking at this from post-war SecNav or post-war Congress. They're not stupid. They're like, okay, we've mostly paid for the other 2 Iowas, so we can finish them easily. That gives us 6. That's safe. We've got 1 more of those Des Moines building. We can finish that, bring it up to 4. That's safe. And then you look at the Alaskas and go, well, the Des Moines are cheaper to run than the Alaskas are, and we have 4 of them. The Iowas are only a little bit more expensive, and we now have 6. What's the point of you 2?
Also, you have to remember, they don't get rid of South Dakota class immediately.
And North Carolina's either, even if they are a little bit battered.
No, so they've got another 6 second-line battleships sitting there ready to go.
Now, I will point out, I do think the Alaskas will probably do what they did historically, and they won't be, I don't think they'll be instantly going quietly into this good night. They'll be around for a little bit.
The trouble is, they're neither fish nor fowl. They're not big enough to justify themselves. They're not small enough to be cheap to be affordable as a status unit.
Yeah. And the problem is there is only 2 of them, which is the problem. And that's the problem for reactivation or reworking. Because if there's 3 of them, you can get a class of 3 reworked ships, which is a nice, lovely number.
Well,
but
yeah.
There weren't 3 of them.
I've got a full video coming out on Friday about capabilities and why you buy warships, etc., and how the numbers work. And literally it is, if you want to have one guarantee 1 as a capability, you need to have 3. Pretty much the minimum. And I know they like to say that these days, navies like to pretend, we're better these days. We can make good do with 2, but just look at the availability on the ships and classes which just have 2 ships, and then
it's the bare minimum. It's the bare minimum.
It's basically it's available in a few days' notice.
Yeah, but what I would say is this is the problem for bringing them back, because if you bring them back, let's say you get Talos and Terrier, and you're looking at completing rebuilding Alaska and Guam into being Iowa successors for the missile age, basically going full ham on missiles with not only AA work, but the Talos space anti-shipping missile that Fox has already talked about in the mid-50s. The problem you've got is there's only 2 of them. And at that point, given there's only 2 of them, you're going to want more. You're probably going to want to phase out the Iowas in toto.
Well, you might make a partnership. Sorry, this is me spitballing, but this is me thinking. You might make a partnership where you add them and you actually complete the rest of the Alaskas. So the Alaska holds, the rest of the classes holds, hang around for quite a bit.
Okay, so
I must actually quick thing. So I'm fighting this missile being referenced in development, but can't actually find out what it's called, which is a bit strange. So
It might have been, considering the size of the Talos, it might have been more, can we fit an anti-ship mode to the Talos missile?
yes, because
Apparently, it's
it's
something
no.
based. Well, the problem is the Talos had an anti-shipping mode, but the problem is it had to be directly guided onto the target by its illuminator, so it was within horizon only. I think this was.
But this reference to kind of just that it had a much larger heat warhead.
No, Knight. There were only 2 Alaskas completed.
Yeah, unfortunately.
They got close to finishing Hawaii, but they never finished her.
Unfortunately.
Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Samoa were just never laid down.
Unfortunately.
Which is probably for the best. The only thing I have with this idea of completing the Alaskas is the following. Given that you want to build a new ship, given that you want a new missile, primarily missile capability to replace the role the Iowas have stepped into in the Red Fleet timeline as we're reworking it, I do have to question whether or not, given that they have been sat for as long as they've been sat, and you're looking at the either the late 50s or the mid 60s before you're looking at this replacement, I have to question, given the problems that ships that are laid up for this period before being restarted do have, I can't help but think keel up design to avoid the problems.
Probably more sensible, but you have to remember Hawaii's hull isn't actually broken up till 1960.
Oh no, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, regardless of what the
And
state
she
of the
was-
hulls are, it's
She was
more.
84% complete, so she was watertight.
Yeah, I know, but it's still just the
So
machinery.
her hull wouldn't have had the issues which would have had the problems. What usually happens is that there are stages where you can stop a ship. She was launched. She wasn't fully fitted out, but she was watertight.
Yeah.
So as long as stored properly, she's fine. She's basically a virgin hull.
Yeah, it's possible, but you would have to rework the internals of the ship to make it what you want it.
But you're gonna have to do that to Alaska and Guam anyway.
Yeah, I know. This is what I'm saying. So, and especially since given what we're talking about, you're probably going to want a smaller ship. Probably something around 28. Probably something like a little bit bigger than a Des Moines.
Now, Fleet, I want you to do something for me.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to forget anything you know about shipbuilding and just be a normal human being.
Mm-hmm.
And if I tell you that we're looking at the options, and you've got the options are we can either convert these 3 existing ships, i.e. existing cars, or we can build 3 brand new ships, i.e. 3 brand new cars. Which are you going to immediately think is cheaper?
Rebuild.
You really think it's going to be cheaper to build than convert a car?
No, I
Or a
said
ship.
no. I said rebuild. I said rebuild.
Okay, rebuild. Sorry, I didn't hear the rebuild. The
Yeah.
rebuild. I just heard the build.
Yeah.
Um,
My caveat.
This is the trouble with Congress. This is what you have and this is what you have the arguments in a nice way with the UK government or any government in any period. When you say this, they always think rebuilding a ship is going to be cheaper than building a new one.
Yeah. This is my this is my only problem with that, is that if I am Congress and I'm looking at, I think this is the thing. This is the thing. Do we have to actually consider if, even with Soviet heavy fleet assets, when you've got well, we'll get. Look, okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We're getting ahead of ourselves. I can't keep my thoughts straight because I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so, okay, so, we need to then look at the. So I don't have any problems with Graf Zeppelin being completed in Russian service originally. That part of the timeline, I think, still holds up if her engines are all right, and her being used basically as a training and experience carrier. That's fine. I don't have any problems with the Soyuz class being finished or the 6 Stalingrads. Nothing really wrong with that. The thing we need to deal with in the 40s then is the UK. because this is where I run into trouble. And I was thinking about this yesterday. Would it be the 4 Maltas, or would it be the 3 Audacious's? And just finishing them to completion post-war? With the Maltas being the thing that go, but you get all 3 Audacious's and you get them completed on time, basically. That would be, to me, a more reasonable thing to do than try and get the Maltas going again.
It's going to depend on when a decision's made.
So I had it originally the UK restarting work in 47 on whatever they're going to do after work begins on Graf Zeppelin in Russia.
That's bold.
The Malta class hulls aren't scrapped till 1948. Their construction's paused in October and December 1945, but they aren't scrapped till 48. So
this is my thing.
I think that's just about. And the thing is, the Audacious class are the ones before that, right? And
oh yeah, and Eagle's gone in 46, so she's already gone. Which these are
yeah,
2 Audacious.
she's gone, and Africa's gone in 46.
So at that point,
Africa's
then,
yeah.
So at that point, then you've only got. Actually, no, because it says cancelled 45 for the Maltas.
Yeah, because the Maltas weren't actually laid down. The yards were gearing up to start, but they hadn't actually laid keel plating.
No, they had.
Had they? Everything I've found on them always said that they weren't actually started.
I mean, to be
The
fair,
Audacious's
there is
were, but not the Maltas.
there is a way around this if you want to go with what we can roughly know outright. I did say that in 45 the UK did move to cancel the Maltas. What I could expand that to is basically the UK just puts a hold on outright cancelling anything in 45, with the Russians getting slightly more stuff off the Germans.
Okay, so can I just say, just to clarify something, it's Hobbs who puts forwards that they were never even started by any shipyards, and he's done that based on his analysis of the Admiralty work. The things I found job numbers in both Camel Laird's archives at the Weir archive, and I found job numbers at the Tyne and Weir archive for them. Which the numbers they only move to that numbering system once some metal's been cut.
How much of the money? This is the thing that I think is going to matter really. How much of the money had been paid for the Maltas compared to how much had been paid for the Audacious's? I think that's what's going to clinch it. So I think we can get all 3 Audacious's if we have the move to cancel.
Well, the trouble is, it has to be before 1946 because the moment she's done, she's done.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Because of what they do with her. Sorry, I'm just being pawed by a poodle.
It's all right.
So I got distracted there because he jumped on my nose. With the Audacious, with HMS Eagle and her being scrapped, the reason she was scrapped when she was 23% complete was there was an issue developing in her hull. She'd been originally ordered from Swan Hunter, transferred to Vickers Armstrong, and it had caused issues with her.
Right.
Now, those issues wouldn't have been insurmountable, but it's going to be quite expensive to finish her off. And that's one reason why she's cancelled like she is. But yeah, it's certainly not a beyond belief to have the 3 of them completed.
It's probably, which would you say is more realistic? 3 Maltas or 3 Audacious's, which is more closer to realism?
Honestly, I'd say it's going to sound strange, but if I was looking for a class of 4 carriers and I was going to build 4 carriers, considering their improbability and where they're being built and where one of them's being started, it might well be the 3 Audacious's and HMS Africa.
So that gives you 1 quasi Malta, since Africa will probably be heavily reworked before she's built.
Yes.
Okay,
She'd
that
be she'd be
And you-
Africa. You have to remember, Africa was being built by Fairfield and Fairfield in Govan.
yeah.
And Africa is one of the ones ordered in October 1945, and she's the one which they have not only started earliest but have done the most work on.
So in that case, then yeah. So that's okay. So that's since a lot of the money has been paid for those audacious class ships, that's not. Especially if the Attlee government is framing it as a job-saving measure, which is how I did it in the Red Fleet
Well,
timeline.
also you have to look. If you look at the different people building, that means only John Brown on Clydebank is out without a carrier being built. Audaciouses are spread across Camel Airs and Vickers, and then you've got Fairfield, and the Audaciouses are being built by Camel Airs and Harlan and Wolf.
And you've got Africa as well, wherever she is.
So you've got one being built in Belfast, one being built in Birkenhead. Eagle is being built by Vickers Armstrong, so that's in Newcastle upon Tyne, and then you've got one being built in Scotland, a carrier being built in Scotland, Africa. So you spread it around the shipbuilding communities,
And that's going to actually help the UK post-war. It's going to help avoid some of the slump. Obviously, it's going to sting.
You're going to have a fight between Govan and Clydebank over the fact that Africa's probably being completed, but John Brown's isn't completing Malta.
Yeah.
So that, in a nice way, if they're being really political about it, then then it's both Africa, Malta, and the three Audacious we've done, and then they've hit all five.
The problem I have with that is, like, I can stretch the UK's. I can probably stretch belief a little bit by completing the three Audaciouses and one quasi Malta. Completing another carrier just for the sake of being political, I don't think is within the UK's
then
budget.
that's why they're doing a 1-for-1 replacement of the Implacables and the Illustriouses, which are in service. At this point.
So you could phrase it that way and go, look, we're cutting costs and crew numbers as well, but we're also saving shipbuilding. So you could phrase it that way.
We're replacing all the warships which have been damaged and have served in wartime with new ships.
Okay, so that works. I'm happy. So that actually gives us 5 carriers compared to the 4 that I had the UK going into the 50s with originally. Yeah. Okay, that kind of works.
And it's basically, it can be framed completely as a job scheme because it's one for each of the yard areas. Okay.
So that actually can be. Yeah, okay. So something else. I have Graf Zeppelin and Soyuz in 46-47 is fine, that's 2 yards. I have all 6 Stalingrads laid down in 49. 3 in January and 3 in March. Do the Soviets have the yards for that?
On paper they do. They have that on paper they do. I
mean, they have
they're supposed to be laid down in the Marty Yard, the Baltic Yard, and Moldoska. And yeah.
So
yeah, they have the yards. Those yards could have handled the second one. You want to have them laid down in when?
The first 3 in January of 49, second trio in March of 49.
Historically, they're laid down in 1951 and 52.
Yes, I've had to push it forwards to get them in service before Stalin croaks it.
Yeah, you could do that. Those yards will not be in the best position to build it, but this has never stopped the Soviets starting construction before.
Yeah.
And but the image of construction, comrade, not the reality of construction.
Yeah, to be fair, it takes them until, like, they're only just scraping before Stalin is dead.
When does Stalin die in your timeline?
53. So they all enter service over the course of 53. It takes them 49. It takes them 4 years to go from Keel Lane to commission. That's not even worked up.
Originally, they were scheduled to take 4 years to go from Keel Lane to commission. So yeah.
Fair enough, that's not too bad then. Graf Zeppelin's rebuild, which is basically just slightly refreshing the engines and adding a Soviet fire control suite and ripping out the catapults, that takes them from 47 to 52, which I think is fairly realistic, given the amount of examination they're going to have to do before they can even start work on her. Soyuz takes from 46 to 51. I think that's fairly accurate, given that she would have been in a bit of a state in the Baltic after, the Great Patriotic War, even if she was 50% complete.
Yeah.
Korean War have not really changed. 54, obviously, we've changed that completely. So South Dakota and North Carolinas are now in reserve as normal, and we have 6 Iowas rather than the Iowas being carefully mothballed.
You haven't changed the Korean War.
No, I haven't. I have decided to ignore that whole Sovietsky Soyuz going out to Korea. It is kind of silly. It is kind of silly.
It wouldn't go out to Korea. It's not the Russians would go out to Korea, but think about the Allied carriers now involved.
Oh yeah, you've got the Maltas. That's true, and the
And Audaciouses.
Yeah,
Probably Audacious will be completed first.
the Maltas will be coming in mid the Audacious. So if I originally had 4 Maltas completing in 52 after restarting in 47. So you're saying the Audacious will be a little bit earlier than that?
Yes.
But the 2 Maltas might be around that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll work with that then. So that gives you.
So you could have an Audacious going out there to go hello, and making the case for it. And the thing is, if an Audacious turns up, you might get the British trying to deploy some of their naval jets.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
And remember, the Brits are famous for getting the only prop-powered aircraft kill of jets going to take on the Korean War. Which, by anyone who researched it, even the pilots themselves say was as much luck as it was judgment and skill.
I'm trying to find a picture of Audacious as actually commissioned. Well, either Eagle or Royal as commissioned, rather than as rebuilt. Good luck to me.
I wasn't going to say good luck to you. I was just basically going to say it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. Anyway, just.
I've got one for you, but it's a stern one.
It'll
it's
do.
on their Wikipedia page, actually.
It'll do. It'll do. It's something.
Yeah, the stern one. If you go to the Wikipedia page.
Oh, there we go. Scoot's got one.
They have them. They have a couple of them.
Oh, there we go. Hey, there we go. So they were straight deck as commissioned. That's probably not going to change.
No.
So it's only the Maltas that have been really reworked, and honestly, Sea Dodder's Malta is not a bad design at all. I think I've got that on here.
And you end up with a pretty good.
No.
It's going to sound strange, a pretty good carrier set, especially if you've got 5 carriers like that, which are broadly speaking similar, because they're going to be able to operate them. Usually have 2 available. Because of 5, you normally have 2 available.
Yeah.
Which means you're gonna get kind of used to having the ability to deploy a carrier. And that's the thing. Once governments get used to the ability to deploy a carrier, they kind of don't like giving it up.
So Dr. Knight's asking where in the Malta start. We already covered that. Yavuza's shore guns as shore batteries in the boss. We'll get to Yavuza in a minute. Won't any Malta be converted to angled deck during construction? Sea Dodder's Malta redesign is a pretty good Malta design that he came up with for the Red Fleet timeline. Is a pretty good is actually a very good look of what they would probably look like. So you've got a soft angled deck rather than a full angled deck, basically. I'm just going to use the Red Fleet Timeline video to bring it up, because that's better than having to drag him away from being in the actual Falklands, where he actually is. And I can use footage from that because it's my own bloody channel. So I can do whatever the hell I like. So yeah, as you can see here, Sea Dodder's Malta, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Just
You're lucky this is an academics.
slight,
How dare you use something you did?
yeah, slight angled flight deck. Obviously, like we say, we would probably rearrange the 4-5 turrets a little bit, but that's not unreasonable. She's not exactly perhaps as she would look, but it's a pretty good approximation. It's not perfect, but it's about right.
Fleet.
Yep.
Sea Dodders lives.
Oh, he's here.
Yeah. To quote, I'm home. It was only a 4-month rotation.
Oh, he's
I
here.
swear even
We're
Sea Dodders,
redoing.
I swear, didn't you even say a couple of weeks ago, guess who's back?
Oh,
With like a
whoops.
picture showing that you were back in the UK.
Whoops. I guess
I-
Fleet. I guess Fleet dies now. It's fine. It's fine. I guess Fleet dies now. This
Whilst
is
I don't
fine.
necessarily disagree with this outcome, I do find it slightly annoying in the middle of a live that you would die, because it's going to make wrapping it up.
Oh
very
yeah, it's all
difficult.
Do you know how
sorts
much
of
paperwork
problems. Yeah.
also that means?
Oh yeah. Like
Yeah.
So
At
Also,
least have to
you
fill
have
out
to-
2 forms.
Do you have to contact YouTube of, hey, sorry, this stream's still going and needs to be shut down because the person streaming it's now dead?
how would you deal with
Yeah.
that? Yeah, it's a bit.
No, you won't have to do that. You just have to wait for BT or Virgin Media, arguably BT but worse, to have an internet outage in the next that they have every 2 to 3 hours.
Hey, no, as someone who uses
That would
Okay.
turn
Virgin,
Okay.
Virgin actually works pretty well for me.
Okay.
Most others not so much.
So now we come to. So we've gotten through battle. We've gotten through the first part of carriers. So first thing, we now come to the RN. So Vanguard being retained as historical. That's not really surprising, at least at first. We will deal with that in a minute. But I did say obviously that the Royal Navy retains Howe as a second line combatant, and her 4 sisters are stripped for spares. I am kind of sat here going,
Depending what you say here could be interesting.
well, I think there's a few things we need to discuss. I think we need to look at. Because obviously one of the things that is a soft feature of the Red Fleet timeline that we don't often discuss are the Minotaurs. The 2 batches of Minotaurs.
Which Minotaurs?
The auto-loading 6-inch guns from Hell Minotaurs. Those
Right,
ones.
so design Z Minotaur. Because
Yeah,
remember,
but-
Swift shows are sometimes referred to as the Minotaur class.
Yeah. But the thing is, they've always been soft mentioned, and in images we've never actually discussed them, and they're not part of the proper timeline. So my question would be, if you are building Minotaurs in 2 batches of, say, 3 ships each, one set with, like, the full 10 guns and one set with 8, basically try and cut the cost, basically, from the second set. If you've got 6 modern auto-loading cruisers, and the US is sat there with 6 Iowas, I do have to wonder, even with an enhanced Soviet surface threat, given the capabilities of these gun-armed Minotaurs, I can't see Howe being retained at all. I can't see the Howe
see,
and the
this
4
is-
sisters.
You're
hang on.
forgetting. You're forgetting. It's not about. How do I put this politely? Okay, why? And I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want you. Don't respond with the rude intentions, but respond with thinking. Why is a battleship attractive to a politician like Trump, as a phrase?
Because no one else has one.
And because battleships come with a certain what?
Gravitas.
Status. Gravitas will do. The thing is, it's not just politicians like Trump which are like this, and it's one of the things you deal with in naval affairs quite often is the fact that realistically, sitting there going, do we need X, Y, or Z? Well, one of the arguments made for it is, frankly, it's something A, they'll give money for that we can sacrifice later in another funding round, and B, it's something which they want because it's the status it brings with it. People don't care how many cruisers you have at this point. They care battleships and they care carriers.
How?
It's going to be later in the Cold War they're going to be caring about cruiser numbers. At this point, the US Navy's barely even referring to anything as a cruiser. That they're
May I,
building.
may I
can I
also
ask you-
chip in a point?
Yes.
Quickly. There's something interesting here. You're forgetting actually something rather interesting, Fleet of Historical. They did look at keeping Anson or Howe already, but also they've actually considered keeping another ship around.
I swear to God, if you say repulse, I'm going to.
No, renown.
Well, you're
Repulse
lucky
was
then, because I'm
sunk.
going to say renown.
That's even worse.
Repulse was sunk. They couldn't keep her around.
Sorry, yeah, I
fleets.
got me battle cruisers mixed up.
Yeah, and I
Anyway.
entirely decided to use that to escape fleet trying
Anyway.
to say I swear. But yeah, because they actually considered keeping renown in active service. There was a potential planned refit to
Yes.
swap out all her 4.5s into new generation 4.5s with full radar assistance.
Worn out.
Well, yes, but no. Her hull's definitely showing signs of age. But keep in mind, she's had, what, 2 or 3 major refits and arguably almost 1 great rebuild?
Yeah.
Whilst
She's not in that bad a condition.
While I do
She's actually
appreciate,
in better condition than some of the other ships.
while I do appreciate that, I do have to raise a few points. Firstly, I do still think
You don't like
that.
renown.
But no, it's not that. I do like Renown. She's a
You
nice
don't have
ship.
good taste in ships. because
Would
don't-
you
like
let
fish, but
me
don't like
finish,
renown.
man? For God's sake!
Okay.
Go
Look.
on, fleet.
So we've already squeezed the UK's budget once to get the 5 carriers. I'm now squeezing it again to get 6-inch gun cruisers to basically replace everything else in the Royal Navy that is a cruiser.
I
Apart
think,
from-
Fleet, I think under this scenario, you'd actually get more because look, under this scenario, what you might get, and I could see this quite happily, quite simply happening, is if the Soviets have a greater fleet, then it's suddenly Britain's contribution becomes: can we provide a massive army for the Central Front, or can we provide a large navy? At this point, we have the large naval infrastructure. For us, building ships is far more efficient. So you probably see a rebalancing of Britain down towards providing air power and sea power to support NATO, rather than also trying to maintain the British Army of the Rhine.
Okay, so no British Army
So
of the
that's
Rhine.
going to change some of your funding. You're going to have a British Army of the Rhine, but it's not going to be the romping, stomping, free corps formation which they were looking at.
It's
Problem
probably
you-
going to be maybe 1 or 2 corps, but with a lot more focus on command elements because
That's
they've
gonna
realized
leave
those
a
Yeah.
that's gonna leave a gap in the in NATO's defenses. Like who's gonna fill
Not
that gap?
really.
gap?
Well, also
It'll-
because may I
It'll
ask
probably
a
be
quick
filled
question?
by other people.
Can I ask a quick question then? So,
Mhm.
in this scenario, Russia's got a bigger fleet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Italy doesn't have a big fleet anymore.
No.
No.
France
France.
doesn't have a big fleet anymore.
No.
They've got what's left of the pre-war. Who else in Europe has a fleet?
The Americans.
The Americans are not in Europe though. They
No.
will base
They are.
stuff in, they will base stuff. They might base some stuff in Europe, but I think what you'll see is basically the British will have to invest more into the Navy, and basically you are the Navy of Europe.
Yeah.
You buy time for the American strike group to come over if this sort of situation kicks off. You deter long enough until NATO can go, we are now here in force.
Basically, you
While-
can test the Russian ability. Basically, you don't
Yeah.
you don't pressure because the Russian plan for the entire Cold War was basically sea control down to Narvik and contesting the North Sea. Basically, you force them to not contest the North Sea until the Americans come in, and then
No,
you
you-
can force them out from there.
Well, arguably,
Your
You're
job
kind
is
of
to
right,
try
I
and
think.
contest them from getting to Narvik,
Yeah,
so they
that's
can't
what I
get to
said.
the North Sea at all.
Ooh,
Because your
that's
job is
gonna
to
be
try and
difficult.
keep the sea lanes open. Basically, if you have to remember, during the Cold War, which navy was technically in charge of the Eastern Atlantic?
The Royal
Who was
Navy.
Commander in Chief of Eastern Atlantic? Yes. And basically, in this scenario, being CNC East Atlantic is not going to be just an ASW job, is it?
No, it's going to be a full-on carrier job. But even
So
with
CNC
5,
East Atlantic is going to become a major component because let's wait. There are other people who can step up and provide troops in Germany. There is no one else who can do the CNC East Atlantic, especially at the beginning.
no.
so I do think you still see a British Army of the Rhine. It just might not
Yes.
be as big. And as I said, you probably have then more British command elements because Britain did very well in command.
Oh god, that the dragon.
You then you can fill in the gaps.
Dragon, you know what this is gonna mean?
Mm?
The Centurions in British service last even longer.
Unironically.
Okay.
They-
Okay.
Because if the Navy's
We're getting-
eating so
actually-
much more money, the Chieftain project isn't going to get the money it needs, which means Conqueror and Centurion are going to stick around into the 70s.
Actually, so here's a bit of this is a slight weeds question, but I think it actually could potentially be interesting.
Mhm.
Have you heard of HMS Leviathan fleet?
Do you mean Drax one-off MacGuffin McMuffin? That one?
I have no clue what you're referring to there. You're going to have to be a little bit more specific.
So no, in that case, then no, I haven't heard of the Leviathan you're referring to.
HMS Leviathan was a what's called Majestic, I believe technically, class fleet carrier that was basically finished, but she never was.
Right.
Would you see her get finished in this point? Because she has her full deck ready. Like the ship is almost done, but then is scrapped post-war. She gets scrapped in '68. Because then that also means Britain has potentially has another light fleet carrier if they do finish it. Because at that point, if there's these tensions, you might as well finish her.
Well, there's no extra tensions in the Cold. That's something I'm making abundantly clear. There's no extra tensions in the Cold War.
I think the Russians having a bigger fleet is going to mean there's going to be extra tensions. But it's going to be a case of we actually have to look at their navy in this light now because they have a big surface navy.
It's going to be not so much. I think you're using the wrong phrase. It's like you're thinking extra tensions as in being a higher tension, higher threat. Think it more as a spreaded threat. So you're not just going to have Checkpoint Charlie. You're going to possibly have the GI-UK gap, and there's a Russian carrier battle group deciding to operate off the north of Scotland for an exercise.
Yeah, or you've given the Russians the capability to send a couple of ships to proactively observe the Malayan crisis and the defeat of the Malayan communists, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you're going to have tensions there because the
Soviets
couldn't do much about Malaya historically, but if you give them the ability to do something, would they do something?
There's going to be a lot of standoffs. Like, for example, if you've got 6 Stalingrads, that's 6 service action groups you can theoretically form. Probably 4 more to be more realistic.
Because
Yeah.
Because this is what HMS Leviathan looked like in 1946.
Wait,
I've just put it in the
she's
chat.
basically finished.
She's got the full deck and everything. She's just missing final.
Is she a light carrier?
Yes, Majestic class.
I mean, at this point, I'm still seeing the RN ejecting a lot of its light carriers as historically, given that.
Well, they might be, but they might also not be. You have to remember, Australia traditionally had a couple. Canada got some and some things, but it might be a case of they actually, if the Soviets have the capability, they might actually want to have more. And also for it might be a case of the Royal Navy is supporting them and operating them. For example, there was consideration given because the Canadians went, well, we'd like a third. The Australians went, we'd like a third carrier, but we can't really operate it ourselves as a full crew. Well, if we give you the money because we don't have the population or naval service to do so, they might give Britain the money, and Britain with national service going, okay, we'll operate the third carrier for you.
Okay, so I do want to say something, which real quick. Bear in mind, we still haven't gotten.
For the record, that is Leviathan in the center there, so you can see just how finished she actually is.
But just very quickly, we haven't gotten to even Graf Zeppelin's Great Rebuild yet. Which spoiler alert is not going to happen. But we haven't gotten to. Yeah, but bear in mind we're in the mid 50s at this point, and the Russians still have only 1 carrier, and as far as everyone's aware, they're not planning on building any more.
Yeah, no one's going to be betting on that though.
Yeah, but this is my point.
Yeah.
Even if the Russians commit, the British still have 5 full-size carriers to the Russians' 1 ex-German relic. And if the Reds do commit, then the Royal Navy can also commit if they are committing to this largest fleet as you're suggesting they would, which I think is fairly realistic.
Fleet, how much forces did the British have to devote to hunting down German surface raiders?
A fair chunk.
Yeah. Think about now this, you're dealing with Soviet surface raiders, which could be launching from the Pacific, could be launching from...
Well, the Pacific would be the US's problem.
Yeah,
not-
they could be launching from the Pacific, but they might not be in the Pacific. Ship doesn't have to stay in the Pacific if it goes out the Pacific base.
True.
I'm sorry, I've got to go put a poodle in the garden. He's rather desperate moment. But that's the thing is the British are responsible at this point for the Indian Ocean. The British are responsible for the South Atlantic.
Yeah.
So, as well as the North Atlantic. So the British need to have a force in those areas, or they need to support there being a force in those areas. And if you're hunting down surface raiders, your best tool is a carrier. At this point.
Okay, that's fair.
And if you need to maintain your fleet carriers for support of northern operations in North Atlantic, then that means you've got to have something else which you can send hunting down surface raiders. And let's be honest, the light fleet carrier is probably
at this point it's still combat capable. Yeah, we're still in the era where they can operate pretty much anything the RN's fielding.
Also, to quickly go back to when you're talking about the cruisers, because that's sort of where this came from. Yes, but I also don't think you see the towns taken out for a while either.
That's what I was going to say before we had to pivot quickly.
Yeah,
I was about to say.
I literally returning us back to where we were.
If you look back at what I was saying, it says they replaced all RN cruisers, but then literally I was about to say, but you probably still see the more modern towns and the stuff like the Minotaurs retained.
Because, in my opinion, how you see it is you might see the 2 batches of Minotaurs. Tiger and Blake though are never happening.
No, these ships are replacing Tiger and Blake.
I wouldn't say these replace Tiger and Blake. Tiger and Blake just don't get finished.
Well, no, these are laid down in their place. These are mid-50s keel up.
That's what I'm meaning.
Yeah.
No, you're going to see the finish of Tiger and Blake.
That's what you don't even see them lay down. There's no point. You're getting 2 batches of 3 Minotaurs, one with 10 6-inch guns, one with 8.
Because
and you've still got the
Tiger was laid down
in 41.
In 41.
Well, I see what you mean.
But she's been sitting
and
there
42, and they were launched in 44 and 45 respectively.
Ah.
Their conversion to the auto-loading guns was in the 50s.
So basically, just scrap them.
No, if you're building the auto, hear me, I think you get 2 less of the Minotaurs.
Why?
And you see those auto-loading guns, because we know those auto-loading guns can fit in the Tigers.
Yeah, they're the same gun.
You see.
So
once again, I'm sorry, I'm gonna
wait a sec, please. I might have a slightly better counter that works here, but it can work with the Foxer's thing. So Foxer is right about the hulls are there, and in particular, the decision's made in 1951, right?
Mm-hmm.
In particular, the decision is in 1951, instead of building new cruisers, they rebuild these.
Yeah.
So while I think Foxer does make a good point that these exist, these are things. In this timeline, if the Royal Navy is the government is signing off on new cruisers, there's the case of you've now went the other branch where we are building new ships, we're not reworking these hulls. On the other hand, let me finish with Foxer, because this bit I actually will agree with you. I could indeed see them going, instead of potentially 2 batches of 3, you get 2 batches of 2 Minotaurs. And these redesigned ships to a better spec. You probably don't see them. Let me finish for a sec. I don't see them being finished historically, though. I see them probably trying to be redesigned to the 4X2 that you were talking about potentially seeing for the Minotaurs.
I would agree with that, but I'm gonna. I no.
Let Fleet go. Then you go, Fox. Okay.
I think you've kind of missed the best use of these hulls. We still get, I'd still say, both classes of 3 gun cruiser, but you know what these hulls are, don't you? Lovely, large, empty cruiser hulls. And we're doing this in the mid-50s, just at the time that Terrier is filtering down from the USN.
No.
Correction, this isn't mid-50s, this is 51.
It is.
It's 51, this is before Terrier.
It is historically, but let's... I'd say the RM would sit on their hands and wonder what to do with these hulls for a bit, which would buy them enough time.
No.
So
I don't see them building. I don't see them building 2.
No. So You've got a good point there, Fleet. But hear me out. You probably see these converted, so you get 3 towns basically with the Minotaur-style twin turrets. Because these ships already have their engines installed, they're just missing their armament.
But that gives you 3 hulls that have been sitting for ages with engines that are probably rusted and need maintenance.
No, because they've been maintained.
Even so,
But that was one of their provisions on why they were used instead. And honestly, because you've got everything else, it would be cheap. And it's still 1940s UK here.
well, 50s UK.
They're gonna take what's on front, the cheaper option, and putting these guns in a hole that already exists with engines that exist with radars that are built on paper.
Knight, there's no way for the British to get Sea Slug sooner.
No, there isn't.
Considering
Sea Slug
Terrier's, considering already 55, and that's
Sea Slug was the British going it alone, and the fact they got it when they did is very fucking impressive, considering they basically decided to not use anyone else's tech to get it.
Yeah, but
just before
I
also
had to
anyone.
finish my point before we go onto
Yeah.
Sea Slug.
Well, we're not. We're done. That's all I have to say on it.
No. Yeah, so because this is why you could say on Sea Slug, but right. How I see it is that you see Blake and Tiger finished as full gun cruisers with 8 guns. You might see another class of 3 Minos. Maybe. But if they're laying down the hulls for the Minotaurs are much better candidates for conversion. Because they're physically bigger and they've got smaller engine spaces.
It is worth pointing out that this is the reason why I want 2 batches of 3, because both of the batches get reworked in different ways later down the line. You'll see it in some of the images we get later.
Yeah,
but so I tell you
can I
what.
finish my proposal first?
Yes, but I kind of got to shoot it down.
Yeah, but so you get 3 finished as gun cruisers, so you get your 6 auto-loading cruisers.
Which is 3 of
And
the
then you
Tiger
get
rebuilds and 3 of the first batch of
and
Minotaurs.
then you get those Albemarles, they're the right idea with their Talos. And in this timeline, we actually have a reason to buy into Talos,
Royal
which
Navy
the Royal
Talos.
Navy very nearly almost did.
Yes.
But the only cruisers that are prime candidates for the conversion are those second block of Minotaurs.
Which ironically might mean that you flip it round. The first block might be the 8 gun, and the second block were going to be the 10 gun, and then the 10 guns drop to 6 all forward, and then that gives you 6 guns forward and Talos aft.
No, you're not getting it right. If the Royal Navy are building Minotaurs, the first batch is the 10 gun. Like, that is cemented. If we are building these, they are 10 guns. Because they had 2 designs they had agreed upon for Minotaurs, right? Design Z and I believe Design ZA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Design Z is the Neptunes.
Nope. That's a different one.
And I will point out that, yes, if we are building the first batch of Minotaurs, yeah, absolutely. Well, in that case, then actually, we just have 2 batches of the same. You'd have the Tigers with the 8 guns. Actually, probably 6 with the Tigers, but range 2, 4, 1 aft, given the way the ships are arranged. You'd have the first batch of Minotaurs as pure gun cruisers, and then you'd have the second batch, which is 6 guns rather than 10, but carrying Talos aft, which is a lot better than Sea Slug.
No,
wait a moment.
With Talos, just an issue with Talos itself. You either get the gun armament or you've got Talos because of the volume Talos takes up.
Right.
You've got to have the factory inside the hull.
You do, but
and
the US got away with...
Well,
they did, you do, but the US got away with having forward gun armament on their Talos ships as well.
Not really.
Which...
The Albanese had to sacrifice their entire gun armament.
No, not the Albanese. The other USN ships that carried.
Boston's.
That's it. Yeah, the Boston class. Like if the Boston class can still carry a twin 5-inch or two twin 6-inch forward, and
They didn't have Talos though.
well, which
They-
one
no,
of
they-
them? Which one of them had
The,
Talos?
the Boston had
Terrier.
2 dual Terrier.
Which one of them had Talos then?
So-
'Cause I know there was a
also-
US 6-inch cruiser that carried
Albany
Talos.
Albany had Talos, but Albany only entire armament was 2 twin launchers.
Ah, it was Chicago.
Right.
Sorry, it was
Right.
Chicago was rebuilt. It was a Baltimore that was rebuilt. She carried the single. No, she.
Right. So
I think
can I
you're
go back?
talking about. I think potentially you're. Well, no. Providence is is also on with Terriers.
I know there was a US cruiser that had a 6-inch and a
You're saying
5-inch
Gladstone's?
forward, and Talos
But-
aft.
Right.
Well,
so
no, that is literally Providence has 6-inch and 5-inch forward, and then has it aft.
Well, yeah, but that's fine. As long as
She has Terrier aft, though, not Talos.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure that there was a.
So, right. Quickly going back to the point before I got entirely overrun there, because it wasn't good. The thing about the cruisers is, and also your Neptune's design Y, by the way, Fox. So
Okay.
you've got the 2 different Neptune designs. Design Z, version D, and ZA. It depends which version to go with, because Design Z is the much bigger one at 18,700 tons full load. ZA, on the other hand, drops it down to 17,000 tons.
Galveston. Sorry, it was the Galvestons. The Galvestons
Yep.
have Talos. That was
In
it.
terms of what gun layout you're getting, you're not in the first batch. You're not seeing it drop down to 4 twins.
That's fine.
'Cause at that point, you've just cancelled design Y, which orders had already been sent out, which was meant to have 4 triples for 4 twins, even if they are theoretically a better gun. You've now sort of went back on what you had just done the previous year.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, that's fine. But still, I mean, if the US can fit Talos on a rebuild of a Cleveland and still retain the forward 6-inch battery and a significant 5-inch battery, then I see no reason that the RN can't, if they're building a keel up second batch of Minotaur with Talos, retain the forward 3 twin 6-inch. If the US can get away with this with a rebuild, I don't see why the RN can't get away
You
with
almost,
the
you
same.
almost certainly could.
But the issue is you're getting at most 1, possibly 2 Talos launchers.
That for
Which
the
at most is a salvo of 4 missiles.
now, if you bear in
And
mind,
that's a very limited missile capability
it
for a ship
is-
this size.
It is, but I would point out that one thing I will agree with Knight on is that while you probably won't get Sea Slug sooner, which I don't, because you can't really, given some of the delays it had, what you could get is if the Royal Navy is throwing more money at it, rather than getting the missile earlier, you might get a missile that's more closely akin to something like Terrier rather than what Sea Slug actually was. Which would be a missile that you could carry and rebuild into earlier ships. Why not Tata? Basically because it's the Royal Navy would still want their own missile for the equivalent role that Tata does. They have the infrastructure to theoretically build one, and it's better if they can have some form of domestic missile industry spun up for self-defense weapons aboard ship.
Yes.
Also, in a
Talos-
nice way, the government was prepared to give money for that sort of thing because they wanted to have a domestic sort of capability.
Talos is a
So, Tal-
unique thing because it's very much the absolute peak of what a missile can be in this period. It is
Yeah.
the all singing, all dancing. Holy Jesus Christ, that's a flying telegraph pole at Mach 3. Yes, yes, I know. Yes, Tata has semi-active radar homing, but
the Tata also comes significantly later. Which is the issue.
yeah, Terry is what you're
One of the
thinking
problems
of.
you're dealing with again is national pride again. Like capital ships hanging around, you would get a domestic missile program, at least in large part, because if you don't, are you really a nation worth standing? And also, for Britain, it'll be a case of it'll be even more important they do so, because if they are providing the European half of the half of the naval dimension in NATO at this point, then they are going to be very much concerned with being the European naval, and part of that is going to be putting money into these things. So the thing is, what you possibly don't get from the British is things like the Conqueror program, the Conqueror tank program, instead of the, as addition to the Centurion and things like that, and the research and development instead being put onto the ship side, so that the ships retain the status, because they're basically going to go, okay, that's what we do.
Yeah. What you'll probably see is if the Royal Navy is throwing more money at sea slug, it won't be earlier, but you'll probably launch in with the Mark 1 having the capabilities of the Mark 2. That's probably what you'll launch in with just the raw, because that puts you within shouting distance of Terrier. Not in terms of guidance, but in terms of just raw performance, range, flight ceiling, maximum speed.
Oh, really? Because
Because
missiles guidance is everything.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it being a beam rider. Like, Terry is a beam rider. Well, technically.
Yeah, but
But that's like saying I'm a how to put this? I'm a cyclist of the same level as, I know who's active and healthy in this group, Foxo. When in reality, the only push bike I ever ride is the one in the gym. I don't do one outside the gym.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's a case of, yes, we are both cyclists. Just the one I use is usually actually in my home gym, not the one wandering around.
Yeah, because I can see the Royal Navy adopting Rim 4 and Rim 8 purely because when they're coming out, British don't have anything like them. Talos is better. And with how rapidly things are changing in the 50s, I struggle to see in a time where the Royal Navy is actually getting funding, them not trying to plug that capability gap.
Yeah.
And also, to be fair, we can do what we've always done when it comes to
I
adopting
won't
American
finish,
systems.
I won't finish.
Yeah, but I had something to put in very quickly.
But I was going to get back to the point. And the issue is with Tata, that probably won't get adopted. Because like Clark had said, with the whole national pride thing. And Rim 4 and Rim 8 would give the British time to get Sea Slug and Sea Cat working. And at that point, you get to the British actually having...
What are you talking about? We're talking about Rim 4. I can't find anything on a Rim 4.
Sorry, Rim 2. Yes, Rim 2. Never mind. I get my things mixed up.
Well, the problem is, the problem with adopting Terrier is that it's just so much better than Sea Slug.
Yeah. It's better and it comes earlier, which is why I think they'll adopt it.
But what I would say is, what I was going to say to actually back up your point was that we can do what we've always done. We can also, we're not going to get Sea Cat. Sea Cat's just no. Like, we could probably, we might develop it as an export system, but I don't think we'll adopt it ourselves. It's terrible. But in terms of just to get back to my point, we can just anglicize them. Do what we've always done when we've adopted things like this. Build a factory, buy into the development cycle and produce our own versions of them. So we have that domestic capability. That's probably the safest way to square the circle. But also still give the British decent capability. Which means we're getting British Standard missiles, which is just fuck yes.
I don't think you'll have it go that far, i.e. to British Standard missile. I don't think you're going to have it going that long, developing a UK domestic missile system was, even without the Navy being primary, was considered so important they put all the money they did to develop Sea Cat, Sea Wolf, all these things. And remember, you have to go through Sea Slug and Sea Cat to get Sea Wolf.
Yes.
And, so I don't think you're going to get those things. And Sea Dart, again, it's one of those things of, it does have options to improve it. It was actually quite a good missile for its time.
Oh yeah, Sea Dart's fine. I have no problem with Sea Dart at all.
But the thing is, you don't get those missiles if you don't get the early investment in the growth of industry. What you're more likely going to get is, it's going to sound strange, a more rapid turnover of British missile systems.
Basically, Sea Slug does not last nearly as long.
No, Sea Slug, Sea Cat probably comes into service, but again, doesn't last as long in service.
It's basically just there to be slotted into heavy units, 40mm mounts, and then as soon as those are going, it's like, nope, that's it, bye. Makes sense. That's fine.
So, typical Tartar is a good place to start, but also you have to look at what the British were experiencing with American programs at this point. This is also the period when the British get together the Americans on developing systems, and the Americans basically go, oh, no, we're going to withdraw funding from that. Suddenly, and the British did not find the Americans reliable development partners in the 1950s or 60s. There were issues with it. And it's to be fair, it's not because the Americans are not good partners. They usually are quite good partners. But the trouble is, in this period, it seems like every time you changed over the Senate chair of the committee, the priorities shifted. It's not the president changing and defense secretary, it's the Senate chair, British committee, and suddenly funding is withdrawn, and it's you have all sorts of issues. And that just keeps happening to them. And also, one of the things which Fleet's very nice but hasn't included in his analysis is that this is also the period of Joe McCarthy in terms of American politics. And that does mean that a lot of there is a very big Red Scare going on, and therefore them having one carrier is going to be like them having 10 carriers any other period, because of what Joe McCarthy and those like him will do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the British do look at Tartar and do probably consider it, but again, it's going to be a national pride thing. We're the other major power, and we are one of the world's former great naval power. It doesn't really matter the capability of the weapon; it matters that it's British.
Alex,
especially when you're talking to a Labour government at that time.
What's the earliest you can see Sea Dart entering service? This is important.
Oh, Sea Dart?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, it's one of the things that's actually delayed entering service.
Yeah. So when is the earliest you could see it entering service, given what we've discussed so far?
They designed it in 1963, and the reason it doesn't enter service till about 1973 is because the British are so late putting it on a ship.
Well, I've just been thinking. You know how we've built these Talos driven, this last batch of Talos armed Minotaurs to bring modern cruisers in the RN up to 9 auto-loading ships. You've got the Tigers, which have been rebuilt with 6 guns. You've got the Minotaurs with 10, and then the second batch with 6, and then Talos. I'm just thinking, they're going to be in service, I reckon, by about the late 50s. If we then look at our air defences for our carriers and go, we need a new air defence ship, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking we put 2 Sea Darts on the counties. That's what I'm thinking.
You'd have to do a different county hull design, but let's put it this way: the Sea Darts, the design, the actual program that leads to Sea Dart starts in the 1950s. And when we say 1950s, we're talking 1953, 54. And then it starts working on, and they actually have a design by 1963. It's almost chosen by the Dutch and various other people. it enters service in 1973, and the whole reason it's laid then is because that's when Bristol enters service. And
But if we push back because of funding the counties a little bit, because obviously we have spent a bit of money in the 50s, if we push the counties back a bit and rejig them...
Well, the thing is, there's a massive gap between the counties and... if you consider, the counties are all laid down by 1966. So they're designed, so been confirmed, and that's something else. Batch 2 are laid down first in 1962. Batch 1 in 1959. That's too early. But if the counties, or if it's a third batch of the counties built, if you build a third batch of the counties, if you build, let's say you've got the 4 in the batch 1, you've got the 5 in batch 2. If you build another 4 in batch 3, and you're laying them down, I don't know. Let's say let's say the batch. Let's say actually the 4 in batch 2 are Fife and Glamorgan are both laid down in 62.
What if you push them back?
Let's say Antrim, Norfolk onwards are a batch of 4, because they're laid down in 66.
What about
if Antrim, Norfolk were a batch 3 county class, they could be fitted with CDART.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is,
and you don't have to change anything to do about CDART's development, realistically.
Yeah, and that's fine, and that gives us. I mean, that does give us 6 things with Sea Slug, which is it's fine. And that does give us 4 with Sea Dart, and of course we still have to make up for Sea Slug.
And the thing is, if you're fitting batch 3 with Sea Dart, you could then retrofit.
Could you swap Sea Dart for Sea Slug?
Well, if you consider the sheer weight of a Sea Slug unit, you could probably do something with it.
Yeah.
And remember, it's ARF mounted, and we are talking about a system which takes up quite a large chunk of the ARF of a county. Yes.
Yeah.
In the space, yes, it's going to be interesting. Let's wait. The naval architects are going to have fun, but they can do it.
Yeah. The only thing I was saying was, in order to avoid that too much, I would suggest pushing back. Knowing that we've got Sea Dart coming, push back 5
put a Sea Slug launcher in the
first 4, yeah.
First 4, so you can see the space it takes up.
Yeah, first 4, the batch 1s, Devonshire, Hampshire, Kent, London. Yeah, absolutely, build them. Let's get Sea Slug into the fleet. You know, let's do that. But Fife and Glamorgan, I would actually push back to I would push back the second batch.
Well, I would love to say you could push back, but the reason they put them is because of their command facilities they brought to the fleet.
But we've got 9 autoloading cruisers. 9 large autoloading cruisers now.
Yeah, this is the thing, is you probably have a very different county class. Honestly, because they don't need to have the command facilities.
So could we make them smaller, say a single 4-5 and Sea Slug?
No, they had the twin 4-5s for a reason. They didn't rely on the Sea Slugs. They didn't want to consider how reliable. The reason they have the twin 4-5s is literally as their backup air defense because of the missiles.
Batch 2, if Batch 2 has Sea Dart, can they drop to a single 4-5 and carry Exocet? Become kind of multi-purpose destroyers?
Potentially, but the other option that they were considered is if they had Sea Dart like that, is they might end up with Sea Cat.
Ooh, Sea Cat.
As the short-range missile.
What a horrible thought. I'd rather have the 4-5s, thanks very much.
That's the option. That's what they were considering, because they were worried about area missile ships not having missiles which weren't going to deal with things when they got close. So the twin 4-5s were actually about things which got closer.
Sea Cat.
You know you like it, really.
But we still have... We've really gone round in the woozle here, so... Sort out the Royal Navy cruisers.
Shouldn't you say bow bow or something rather than meow?
Or yip.
Anyway.
You're yip, because you're
anyway.
A fox.
So we've covered the cruisers, which is quite good. Then we've got... So we actually didn't get round to... we didn't actually get round to them. So Vanguard, Howe, and Anson. Those are the 3. And I have to say...
What about Renown?
No, that's not...
Peeking over the corner.
No. Look, I appreciate...
They use the same guns as Vanguard.
They
have plenty
do.
of ammunition, spare barrels.
They do.
And they've got spare guns.
Yes, but they
Actually
don't...
plan to have an engine rebuild.
But No,
And new
it's,
4.5s.
it costs
Didn't
far
didn't
too
they actually
much.
work out how to fit her with gas turbines at one
It
point?
costs. It
Yes,
co-
yes,
the
they did.
The problem is the realism falls flat when you start doing costings. It's all well and good to say rebuilds are more attractive to politicians, and they are. But if you go, we are going to keep Vanguard, Howe, and Anson, or Vanguard and one of the KGVs in reserve, and that costs us virtually nothing. Oh! By the way, something else we're considering is a costly rebuild of an old battle cruiser.
I will.
In
Yeah, I
nice
will
way,
agree.
Fleet. In nice way, to argue against realism, I have one thing to say. One word. Victorious.
Yes, but
Also, I've got another counterpoint to your realism statement here. And you're not going to like this. Renown was considered a higher priority to keep over a KGV.
Yeah.
So you might get one KGV, but I do think Renown's lurking there in the corner. Or if you don't get Renown, I think you're just getting Vanguard and a KGV. I'm not sure you're getting two.
no, that's what I was
Because
going
as
to
you
say.
said, yeah.
Yeah.
I think again there is another option you are not considering quite here, because remember how did the British deal with surface radar threat post World War One, and how even prior to World War One? What were they considering?
Large, fast cruisers.
No, who was going to get them?
You mean the surface raiders, or do you mean the Royal Navy?
Yeah, who was going to get the ships?
Oh, that was going to be the Dominions.
Yeah, and this is something which might actually be in Fleet's favour of keeping the King George V's, because if I have to give 3 Dominions a warship, I'll give at least 2 Dominions a battleship. At least 2 would possibly want one. Let's be honest, they've got large enough navies they could justify them. What ship would I give them?
You'd give them the King George V's for 2 reasons. One, because they are less effective than perhaps Vanguard, but still very effective in the role you want them to do. And also, by breaking up the other 2 sisters of those ships, you create a very decent pool of spares.
Well, no. Let's put it this way. This is the reason why Britain would keep 2, and would have 3, so they could guarantee to have with Vanguard have 3 ships, so they get guaranteed to have one available. If they've given the 2 to their allies, let's say King George V goes to the Australians and
But she's
Duke
so
of York
worn
to the
out.
Canadians.
But they're so worn out.
Yeah, they are. They're going to have to have a great big refit beforehand, which might mean they get missiles added on, etc.
No. Okay, no. I'm digging my heels in here.
No.
This is cost that the British government cannot afford, even with a pivot to the Navy.
Oh, hold up a moment, please.
It's
I've
not
just
the Navy
realised
or the
something.
British paying it, though, is it?
Yeah,
I
no.
also just realised
The
something.
Dominions
Give
are
me a
not
sec,
going
please.
to pay for a battleship in the era of the carrier and the
No.
missile.
Well, actually, they might. But no, guess who is willing to, though? You forgot someone here. And no one else has mentioned it so far.
If you say Nelson, I'm going to throw you off a cliff.
No, I'm not meaning. I'm meaning a country.
Oh.
No one else has mentioned a certain country that, in the early through mid 50s, were interested in buying Royal Navy battleships. Can you guess
Dutch?
who fleet?
The Dutch.
Well, the Dutch as well. No,
The French?
Chile.
Hello, India. How are you?
Chile had put out feelers for, can we purchase Vanguard off you?
The problem
In the
is
mid
that,
50s.
yes, that's good, but that doesn't
And
really...
But they would likely settle for a KGV if you give them a good price.
I mean, that's all well
Which
and
is
good.
which is going to help.
That's all well and good, but that doesn't really help with...
I think in a nice way in this scenario, I could see Canada and Australia wanting their own battleship and settling
Also,
for
well
a
done.
KGV.
Also, well done, Foxo. Oh, sorry, well done, Sea Dodders. You've remembered that blast effectors need to exist. Well done.
Like,
Huzzah.
because Chile is interested. If you were able to convince Australia and Canada to buy a carrier and a battleship, because you probably would sell them together, and basically give them a large discount, effectively.
Basically,
The-
they're
I
going
too
to
have
have they're going to have a pool of about three light fleet carriers and a battleship as their squadron. So they're going to have 3 light fleet carriers and a battleship as their flagship. In a nicest way, after World War II, that's not that massive an upgrade for the Australians, who are buying daring class destroyers and all sorts of things at this point. But it is in the effect of who is going to be most exposed. What's Australia currently really worried about, and has been always consistently worried about throughout their history?
Russian large surface combatants showing above their shoreline, whatever shape they may be, in,
Yes.
whatever flag they may be flying.
And their sea lines of communication. It's what's driving the entire Australia involved in the AUKUS project and everything else. So that's the scenario you're dealing with. For the Australians, this makes sense.
Sea Dollars, when is this meant to be pictured? Because this can't be as built, given it has extra anti-shipping missiles that I didn't call for.
The Canadians. Oh, sorry, go on. Finish up.
And it's also missing its super firing 6-inch in
It's
favour of
not
a
a
3-inch.
it's not a super firing actually. The Minotaur class had 1 deck level, 1 raised, 1 deck level.
Well, yeah, in that case, then it's had its last deck level replaced with a bloody 3-inch.
Yes, that's been raised up.
Anyway, so
But it Canada, I think you do have a fair reason for why Canada might not want it,
yeah, Canada.
but they could possibly be persuaded.
I can definitely see the Australia argument, because they are going to be the Commonwealth's line
Arguably,
of contact for the modern
Fox
Soviet Navy in the Pacific.
Foxo also raised the point. India might actually be tempted to buy something.
Well, they did also buy those carriers originally, so they might actually also do the same with Australia.
If I may, the original thing is that we had the build out of six Minotaurs of two separate batches for the Royal Navy, but we also had the Dominions buy in. So the Australians picked up a pair, the Canadians picked up a pair.
Okay, why are they picking up a pair, not 3?
Because that's all the governments are willing to fork out for, in addition to actually getting the extra carriers as well. Again, they went for the bare minimum, not the proper requirement.
Why are they going for the bare minimum?
Because they don't want to bankrupt their treasury.
I'm assuming post-war austerity is what they would cite.
Yes, given they're operating 2 light fleets and 2 new build cruisers.
Yes, but historically they don't have a naval threat to justify building it, so they put the money elsewhere. But would they do that in this scenario with a naval threat?
The Australians wouldn't. The Australians would buy 3. And that. But the Canadians, given the Canadian funding of their armed forces post-war, historically, when it came to things they actually were threatened by, aka the Soviet air threat, and the lackluster performance they did into countering that, I'm not overly confident in their willingness to take the naval threat any more seriously. The Australians,
How did the British get the Canadians to buy anything during the prior to World War I and joining into war years?
I don't know.
Usually they said, "Oh, Australia's being a really good member of the Commonwealth." And in this scenario, you probably have America and Britain both going, "Australia, we're going to invite you to sit between us at a dinner." And it's a naval dinner, and the Canadian Prime Minister is sitting at the other end of the room.
Whilst I do...
And what happens?
Whilst, yes, I do see where you're coming from, and I do...
And if you really think that doesn't work, then you are a far nicer, far less cynical person than I when you realise how big most politicians' egos are.
That's all
and
well
then you realise the ministers the Prime Ministers of Canada after World War II.
Wait, are you going to tell me that politicians are inherently self-centered?
They do tend to have an ego.
Are you telling me the propaganda lied to me?
Anyway, so, Very
Yeah.
quickly. So we'll park the Dominions for now, since we can't decide what the correct thing would be. I mean, I'm opting more conservative. Dr. Clark's opting more over. So we'll just park it. If we can't agree, we will park it for now.
I just want to see Renown surviving.
She's not going to.
She is.
She's not.
She is.
That is the one thing I'm putting my foot down on and going, no.
And that's why
No.
Renown is bought by South Africa to be their capital, their flagship.
Okay, you know what? Fine. She can be running to the ground in South Africa.
After she's modernized with Telos replacing her
No,
15-inch gun.
no, you get a minor secondary battery refit.
Can you design that quickly?
No, you get a minor
Modernized-
You get a minor
Modernize the
second.
Queen, HMS, Renown.
You get a minor
For the
secondary.
South Africans.
You get a minor secondary battery refit and an engine refresh, and that's your lot.
Well, no,
Telos on the aft. You want it set
No.
$6, you can do it.
well,
No.
you could go curse, replace the entire 15-inch battery with Talos.
No, that doesn't
So you
work.
just fire
That
off 6
doesn't
telegraph
work.
poles of
That
God.
doesn't work. Anyway, so moving on. I think the British are going to retain 2 battleships. I think Howe and Vanguard, because Howe's the newest KGV. I think I could see Anson going to Australia, because they'll want her. I don't think anyone else will be going for the other KGBs. They are a little bit war-torn and a little bit worn out.
How about New Zealand?
They can't afford it
No.
at this point, unfortunately.
They couldn't even afford HMS New Zealand, let alone the battleship at this point.
Yeah. So basically,
I think you're underestimating the nationalism of Louis and Lawrence at this point, though.
it's
I think
not.
you are.
It's basically I'm trying. I suppose it's overcorrection. I was way too overspending and ambitious and silly when I came up with this first. And you know me now, I err much more towards the side of caution than I do.
I just think Louis St. Laurent is arguably one of the most nationalist-inclined liberal prime ministers Canada's ever had. He's their prime minister from 48 to 57.
I mean,
And he is, how do I put this? He is very focused on. It's basically that's the only point where the Canadians actually have some decent government support for defense spending post World War II. Is in his period. He's spending on infrastructure. He does all sorts of things, and then it's basically after he goes that you have the trouble. So if anyone was going to do it, it would be him.
if
Anyone's going to be embarrassed, it would be him. It's in this
If I
period,
was gonna-
48, 57.
If I was gonna swing it, I'd swing it so that he buys 3 full light carriers, rather than him going in for battleships. And the reason for that is basically down to the fact that as the backstop role, having three Canadian carriers with 3 Minotaurs, which means you can form 1 carrier hunting group, especially if they go for the Minotaur variant with Talos, which they probably would, since that gives you an air defense cruiser to defend your carrier. That gives the Canadian Navy the ability to sortie a carrier strike group to basically, if the worst happens and something gets past the Royal Navy, they can deal with it, rather than a one-off battleship that they're only going to have one of. By having 3 cruisers and 3 light fleets, that gives you a single strike group at any one time.
I can give you that point. I can see your point, but I would point out, and this is partial reply to a Yuki in the chat. Sir Laurent was the guy who got the Arrow built. He was the one who got it to the point of manufacture in 1957. Then he goes. It's cancelled from 1959 after he's left office. 2 years after he's left office. He's the guy who had also ordered the nuclear-tipped air defense missiles, and which he used the reason to cancel the Arrow. So he is that guy. He is the guy who wanted a nuclear-armed Canada.
Oh, is he the guy who tries to buy into Genie as well?
Yes. So this is who we're talking about. So I can understand where Fleet is coming from, but there is a reason I'm saying, in this scenario, this is the one time where Canada might actually buy a battleship. This is also the time where Canada's considering getting nuclear weapons. Okay?
Well,
Compared to that, buying a battleship is rather normal.
Okay, I tell you what, Dr. Clark. Given when we're considering this, we'll square the circle, shall we? We will have it so that they go in for buying the KGV. It starts, the process is going, the paperwork's being drawn up. They get the 3 light fleets, they get the 3 cruisers, and then he's out of office, and the sale just falls through.
Well, it would have the KGV would have been available for them to buy almost first. It's more likely they get the KGV, 2 of the light carriers, and then don't get the 3rd, because that's the thing that's going to come in later.
That's objectively worse.
No, but that's the more likely scenario. This is Canada we're talking about.
Yeah, oh my god, that's going to leave them with basically no...
They'd start off with the plan, they'd start off the glorious plan, and then they get...
parts of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the one battleship's going to be held for
We are talking about the guy who started off trying to get the Arrow. He tried to get a Canadian tank program. He wanted nuclear-tipped missiles. He did want the Navy upgrade invested in. And it's after he goes, everything gets cut between 1957 and 1959 by the guy who succeeds him.
Yeah, and this is also before the introduction of missiles like Talos.
Yeah.
When it comes from being a heavy escort to the carriers. The last experience that they had of it was the battleship being what protects the carrier. So if you're getting 2 carriers, you want to get something to protect them.
Yeah. Or rather, you're getting 3 carriers, you want to have something to protect them. It's basically, yeah, the guy you really want to worry about who cancels all the stuff is a guy called John Diefenbaker, who is a conservative prime minister.
Austerity?
Yes. And he gets elected in 57 and loses his post in 63.
The problem...
So, basically, anything they could get before 57, they would get.
Yeah.
Anything after that would be cut.
The problem you've got with... No, I'm just going to address this. The problem you have with Orange Nell is that it's very much a product of its time. Much better systems did come after it. And
Which
there's a
system's
reason why
this?
it was cancelled. It's the one that was supposed to fit into 5.25-inch gun tubs. Basically, replace the 5.25 as a point defense weapon against stuff like Kelt. Sorry, against Comet and Comet. But it was basically dropped in favour of stuff like Seacat, which, despite being somewhat less capable in terms of speed, it was a little bit more capable in terms of being a point defense weapon against most targets. But anyway, so we'll leave the Royal Navy for now. We do have to deal with something else quickly, and that is the Italian Navy. So now, I didn't know this at the time, but I now know that during this period they're still knocking around with Caio Duilio and her sister still officially on the books.
Yeah. And they're also a navy which eventually ends up with Polaris missiles on their cruiser. So
they never got them, to be fair.
They wanted them, but they built a launcher for it. So again, this is the point I keep talking about. This is the late 1940s, early 1950s is a weird period in terms of naval spending. Okay, it's a really weird period. Basically, any idea you could come up with could happen.
Yeah, so
Just quick thought.
So Andrea Doria.
This is a question in general, wait, before we continue.
Right.
Did we ever figure out if nuclear weapons proliferate more in this time?
They do not. No, that's something I put a hard limit on because that would just break everything.
Okay.
No.
Nuclear
weapons proliferate to exactly the same extent they do historically.
So the Swedish, Canadian.
No nukes. No nukes for anybody except those who actually get nukes.
Yeah.
Simple as that. You don't
because a lot of their spending was based around nuclear tip stamps.
Yes, they still do, like, the programs still happen the same way they do historically, but they just end the same way they do historically. Bugger all happens.
Okay.
Again,
I wonder if Norway gets those nuclear shells they were looking at for their artillery pieces though in this scenario.
See, this is the thing. I tried to limit, and I'm still trying to limit flutter as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I can't really deal with a lot of the minutia.
Because
But
the big issue I see when it comes to the realistic spending stuff you're wanting is that beyond a certain point for a lot of the secondary powers, a much smaller navy that's like equipped with nuclear weapons is a more cost-effective and viable approach than a large surface navy. Especially in the Cold War, where the assumption is everything goes nuclear within 12 hours.
Basically, they're gonna. The only reason they're gonna have the large surface navy is if they can't go nuclear for some reason.
Yeah. And South Africa and South Africa, Israel, and someone else showed Taiwan showed that minor powers can go nuclear.
Officially, I'm told regularly by people, no, Taiwan didn't manage to achieve it. Israel, we all suspect, did. South Africa, we know, did. But apparently, Taiwan didn't, out of all those options.
Sure, yeah, honestly, definitely, I believe that.
Yeah. The one which has the largest tech base and has China right next to it and is most scared for its survival.
And was
is the
also...
one which didn't. Yeah.
And you know, the one that was also convinced it could take back the mainland. Honestly, Gov, definitely, totally, we can do this. You know, that one. And the one that would need a backstop of its own type to deter to even attempt that.
Yeah.
It was Sea Dodders. Let's not put too fine a point on it. It was a little bit of a cop out because it basically, but it was a cop out everyone was willing to accept because it meant that it kept war away. Because everyone was spending less, including the Soviets, on their conventional forces. It was easy to justify not going conventional because we weren't ready. That changed post 1975 when you see a massive push for conventional forces from both sides of the Iron Curtain. And into the Reagan era. I'm not going to lie, I do like that county. I like that county rework. That I actually do like. That is, I'm not keen on the Goalkeeper. It's a little bit early for that. And also those things have the problem of exploding. And that's a little bit early for Sea Wolf as well. And the box harpoon launchers as well. But it's not terrible in
The
terms...
trouble is that county would need to grow in about 4,000 tons for those weapon systems and all the computers which would need to be sorted and all the radars.
Yeah.
And systems, and
unless
you've
that's
got
a
radars
refit.
which are you've got good sea darts. Even a refit in nice way, you've got the radars for the sea dart system, but there's not the radars for the Sea Wolf system.
Yeah.
Actually, well, if you unless you can those targeting radars as it, if you got those as your targeting radars, which so they got 3 targeting radars for Sea Wolf. Okay, that's fine. Where are you going to put all the computers and all the stuff from? That's the trouble. The amount of computer stuff you need in as for Sea Wolf.
Just very quickly now, yeah, I know Valparaiso is Vanguard if the sale happened, but it was just a stuff. Yeah, yes, that exists. It does, but that's. Yeah. Anyway, so as part of the Red Fleet timeline, we had Vittorio Veneto and Littorio given back to the Italians. This is one of those ones where I really had to hand wave it to have them survive to the point where they could be given back, and also really had to hand wave the Italians the US umming and awing about what to do with them in order to have them survive in a form that was actually worth putting back into service that wouldn't break the bank to do so. Which kinda... Yeah, given that they're scrapped in La Spezia in 51-52. and they were not in good shape by that point. Given that the Alaskas are still around, if the Italians are looking to get back into the capital ship game, and the Allies are willing to let them, and they're currently operating the Andrea Dorias as their active battleships, that is the one place where I could see the Italians rocking up with a small checkbook and going, "Hi, those 2 Alaskas, can we has, please?" Which unfortunately does mean that the Netherlands doesn't get an Alaska. Sorry, Guy, no capital ships for the Netherlands, apart from a light fleet.
But what about British capital ships?
What British capital?
We could always the Dutch would. We could always sell a British capital ship to the Dutch.
You are not.
Sea still hasn't bought my renown. Produced my renown. I'm looking for the renown.
He's working on it.
There was a renown further up.
Alaska and Guam, Channel Lord.
Is that renown further up? Have I missed the renown somehow? Oh no, that's not the renown. No, I don't. I've seen a renown so far. It's CDOTS. It's not the you've got some radars which could do the job, so I'm going to accept that. It's the space for the computers. You have to remember the Type 22 basically is one of the first frigates which is more computer than is anything else.
I've just put a thing in the chat with the link to CDOTS message, which has a renown rebuild.
That's the renown.
But it's a bit.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
The reason that I'm saying, the reason that I'm leaning towards the Alaskas for the you can see where I'm coming from for the Italians, right? That kind of, it's more capability than what they've currently got, and it's roughly equivalent in terms of cost and crewing, if probably not a little bit more, but not too much more. That's a situation where I can see them slotting in to replace the old 12.6-inch dreadnoughts. Quite nicely, in fact. It's 2 for 2 as well. Anyone have any objections to replacing the Littorios returning with the Italians buying the 2 in reserve Alaskas in 1954?
I think they would. That's a little bit odd.
Given the look, personally, like, part of me wants to say they just let heavy service fleets die. But I am also aware that we are in an era where the Russians have their friends in Syria,
right?
And
so,
Stalingrads will be routinely transiting the Mediterranean to go to the
Littorio
Black Sea.
and Vittorio Veneto were scrapped in 51, right?
Yes, and I had to massively finagle it in 2 ways to have them survive to 54, and not only survive, but survive in a form that would be worth putting back into service, because by 51 they were in an absolutely shocking state.
The thing is, though, it's arguably better for them to get them back in shape than buy in Alaska.
It would be better. The problem is that
Impero is already gone by this point, Chandelord.
There's no realistic way to preserve Littorio and Vittorio Veneto until the mid-50s when the Italians are.
At that point, it's America. You're using an American ship, so you have to get used to the American systems. Basically, having to completely get used to them.
So you probably, there's a big reason why, if you're hiring, they won't get them back. And that's because Italy is going through a process of defascification. Bringing back the 2 major symbols of fascist that period, Italy, when Italy still, even to this day, has a fascism problem.
Yeah, this is part of
but Vittorio Veneto is one you actually could, because Vittorio Veneto is the Battle of Vittorio Veneto, which is something that they still held in quite high regard.
The thing that I will say is partially against you saying these are American ships. They are, but by this point, the Italians are, use to American ships and systems. They've received their first batch of Fletchers and
They're
gearings.
used to American destroyers.
Yes, but if
they're getting rid of big capital ships, then they're not going to buy Alaskas.
Well, no, this is the thing I'm saying. If they're not, the realistic option to maintain that capability without breaking the Italian treasury is the Alaskas. But I'm also leaning towards, do they retain it? But I am also skeptical of, this is one of those things where, knowing how paranoid the Italians are about just everything navally for reasons, if the Stalingrads even just routinely transit the Med to go to the Black Sea or visit Syria, that's gonna make the Italians iffy about not having something that can fight them. And retaining the Andrea Dorias past the mid-50s in an active role is a bit of a stretch. Their whole life is very much on the way out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that they would, like, this is the toss. It's not so much whether they get the Alaskas or not. It's more that if they are retaining the big guns, the Alaskas are basically the only option, realistically. But the question then becomes, even with stuff like the Stalingrads transiting the Med, do the Italians retain the big gun, or do they try and lean into other systems instead to counterbalance? And this is the thing I'm not sure on.
You have a choice. That's the thing is, do you have a choice? If you need to do it immediately, then you have to lean into the big gun, because that's what's available right now.
Okay, so also, you're taking the command fleet. The Soviets only start making inroads and regular visits to Egypt, then Syria after 1956 and the end of the revolution and the Suez Crisis.
That's true, but the Stalingrads will be transiting into and out of the Black Sea as part of routine circulation.
So regular operations in the Mediterranean and basing in the Mediterranean wouldn't be a thing until the late 50s. By that time, you're not looking at getting a battleship, you're looking at getting a missile cruiser.
Yeah, the thing is, 54
and
is
given
when
how the Italians considered buying one of the American missile cruisers with Talos, if anything, you would probably see them actually going through with that if the Stalingrads existed.
The other option is the Italians go for light fleet carrier.
Yeah.
I mean, there are enough light fleets to go around us, especially if we've reactivated Leviathan. And there's more. There's more.
It's not even
finishing.
Finish. Yeah.
Yeah, we have more light fleets to go round. I mean, the French have probably opted to 2. The French have gone, you want to give us an independence? Fuck that. Hey, Britain, I'll buy 2 light fleets, not 1. Aggressive Frenchisms.
Arguably, also, even though she is basically finished, if the Italians do need certain changes to superstructure and such, basically just so like, we want different guns on the AA.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. That's ideal. Yeah. So actually, yeah, Leviathan goes to Italy, since that means they can finish her as they like.
But
if the Royal Australian Navy and the Royal Canadian Navy have each taken 2, historically,
I thought we said the Aussies were taking 3.
The Aussies are, the Aussies are taking 3 in this timeline. Well, historically, Hercules went to India as Vikrant and didn't get scrapped till 1997, and Leviathan is not completed. So in this scenario, Leviathan's possibly completed as the Australian ship. The Canadians they did originally have HMS Warrior, which served with them until 1948 before they got their Majestic class ships. They could keep that as their 3rd ship, actually. And the Australians did originally have Vengeance before it was sold to Brazilian Navy to become Minas Grais. The Dutch got Venerable, which became, of course, a Vicencio de Mail. Glory and Ocean stayed with the Royal Navy. Colossus went to France to become Armache. Triumph and Perseus were both classified as maintenance ships, and basically paid off in 1957, scrapped in 1958 and 1981.
They could be converted into something else, though, or reconverted back into carriers for sale.
Same with, and you've got Theseus wandering around, so you've got a fair number of light fleet carriers to play around with, especially
And of course,
if
the
you've got
Dutch are still getting their historical one as well. The Dutch are getting their historical carrier, so that's not changing.
Yeah, it might be the Italians get one as well.
Yeah,
the Italians might go. We'll have a British light fleet carrier as well.
Yeah, so I guess the Alaskas are still in limbo for now, but we will get to them before, because we've got a good spell from 54 to 59 we have to talk about. So there's not much going on apart from what we've already discussed. Now 59, there's something that I'm just gonna get rid of because it's aggressively silly. Instead of being put into the reserves, Yavuz is sent to the UK for one last upgrade. No, she's going into the reserve. She's worn out, and no refit you can realistically give her can keep her combat capable.
That's a potential customer for renown.
No, this is why
I like a battle cruiser.
This is why I'm still leaning into the homes for the two Alaskas being the two that I am keenest on, the Netherlands and Turkey. The Netherlands,
what would we need an Alaska for?
Well, to be the flagship for a service action group with the two Nizem Provincians and to escort the carrier with Stalingrads around.
Good point.
And for the Turks, she's a 1-to-1 replacement for Yavuz, and restores them to overmatch in the Black Sea against the ex-Italian battleship that the Russians have in the Black Sea, Novosibirsk.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. I can't. After the loss of Indonesia, I can't see the Dutch getting capital ships.
The loss of Indonesia doesn't finalize until the 70s. That thing bubbles on and
Correct.
on for a while.
Yeah, but it's functionally lost.
Not to the Dutch, it's not.
No. A nice way Dutch government is
Yeah, so
and also politely, it means that the Indonesians can't just buy a Sverdlov to have service overmatch, because if during the Papua New Guinea crisis, not only does the Dutch carrier show up, but it shows up escorted by an Alaska. Ain't getting Papua New Guinea, sunshine. Do what?
on the other hand, they could actually put money into the Dutch army in Indonesia. Get that equipped properly.
The problem is the main part of Indonesia is already lost. It's the navy that the Dutch need, and it's why they invest so heavily in it to retain what they've been allowed to keep into the 70s. It's not the army they need. It's the Air Force and the Navy. That's right, isn't it, Guy? I think.
broadly speaking.
What does the Dutchman have to say? He is Dutch. He knows.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so you probably have... So one Alaska goes to Turkey, one Alaska goes to the Netherlands, and that's the Alaska sorted, at least for now. So we can park that and not think about it for a while. Yay. So... Now then, we come to the thing that is... When did the Alaskas... Where did the... Is that to that? When... Okay, I think I've missed the actual refit of Graf Zeppelin when she goes in. But anyway... So, the Graf Zeppelinski probably wouldn't get refit. I am going to say that she serves until 62 when the ship that replaces her, Ukraina, is laid down. Basically a ship of equivalent size, but taking all the lessons the Soviets have learned as a keel-up carrier. Their first keel-up carrier. So Graf Zeppelin doesn't get a refit, and she's just retired and probably scrapped in 62. The other thing that we need to talk about is the Stalingrads and the Sovietsky Soyuz. Now, I can see Khrushchev with his missile obsession demanding that they have the missiles fitted that we have them fitted with in the Red Fleet timeline. That I can still see. That's not. Oh yeah. C dollars. The RN is absolutely getting something like back TSR2. Because not only is that because not only is that useful for a strike reconnaissance platform, but you sling some harpoons under the wings or exocets. That's a good naval strike platform right there. Fucking
You're not getting TSR2.
why not?
TSR2 was an absolute shit show because it's found on a functionally. It tries to do too much with too little.
Okay. What do you mean by that? As in, could you be a little bit more specific?
It's. I'm trying to think of how to say this without going off on a long-winded rant about it. Right. So it started off as a Canberra replacement, right?
Right.
It grew to a Mach 2.2 long-range tactical bomber that could both do interception and nuclear strike rolls at Mach 2 with with an internal weapons bay capable of carrying Redbeard.
Go on, Boxo.
And it runs into the issue of the avionics and the technology just isn't there for it.
Okay, that's all well and good.
They're trying to do a very early version of fly-by-wire, and fly-by-wire isn't really possible when they're building it, which is why it overruns so much.
Can I just add one thing? Can we all agree that Redbeard is possibly the worst name for a missile ever created?
Yes. Yes.
Can we just all blanket agree just now?
Yeah. Can I just before you start again, Fotso, quickly, just want to do the Jess Lord's question. The Alaskas they are not finished or reordered. They are left to languish and / or cancelled. Only the two that are finished are finished. Because the US instead decided quite reasonably to, instead of finishing the ships that cost 80% as much of an Iowa to build and maintain, just finish the two other Iowas you've got sitting around to bring them up to 6.
Yeah, and as Tito just brought up, TSRs 2, the requirements kept changing because the project cost kept skyrocketing. And because the project cost was skyrocketing, it went from being just a tactical bomber to, we can't justify spending this much on a tactical bomber. What else can it do? And then, no, the TSR2 was never going to be better than the F-111. Because the Americans had the money to throw at the F-111 to get its avionics working. The British didn't.
The British were too busy trying to spend money on all sorts of other things. The trouble is, the British were too good at. In many ways, the British were not very good at working out what they need to focus their efforts in on.
Yeah.
And even if we have focused them on the Navy a little bit here, the unfortunate problem we have is that even if there is slightly more money, there's a lot more money there for the Navy, and the Army's still getting money. I think the RAF is going to draw the straw end of the stick in the Red Fleet timeline. Unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's not an issue with TSR2.
No, it's not. But
the issue with TSR2 is we haven't done anything to push computers forward.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, there's what I was trying to get at, Fox, was like back you up. There's no extra money to somehow un-MacGuffin TSR2. It's still TSR2.
Yeah, it's because a lot of the avionics that I developed for TSR2 go on into what becomes Tornado. And giving it that decade for the technology to mature is why Tornado succeeds and TSR2 fails.
Yeah. See, Channel Lord, actually, Hawaii or Alaska would be a terrible fit for Sweden.
Oh yeah.
In the confined waters of places like the Baltic, if you're looking to counter something like a Stalingrad as Sweden, your answer is the new generation of diesel-electric submarines, coastal patrol craft, missile boats, and coastal aviation. Because the Stalingrad can't use its one advantage that it has as a fast capital unit, the ability to ramp up to 35 knots and just disappear, because it's in the fucking Baltic.
Also, can I just count some of that going off as you just said? And I quote, "But the British had competence and intelligence. The US just spends money."
That's not accurate
That's-
at all in
I
any
wish
way.
that was true. I wish it would
Yeah.
make my life so much easier if that was true. Trust me, the just throw money at it is not just an American issue.
Yeah, and it's
An insult to
the
the American
F-111
designers.
when it came out was cutting edge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those people go on about how the F-14 is so advanced when it comes out. The F-111 sitting there going, I'm
My
an
chump change
undertaking.
two kids.
Yeah, I'm an undertaking that rivals the B-2 in cost and capability jump.
Mm-hmm.
And say what you want about the American industrial complex, if you give them the money and you give them actually unified specifications, they don't keep changing, they can pull off some magic.
They can.
Like the avionics on the F-111. Because that aircraft wrote the book on how do you control variable geometry. No, right, gunnery officer. The reason the UK didn't get F-111 is because of the ridiculous American requirements to get in on it. They wanted the UK to buy into the project, not receive domestic production licenses, and shoulder half the cost of the thing in return for being allowed to buy them.
Which was just, no, stop.
No. And at that
This
point,
is what I mean about occasionally the Americans. They have the potential to be very good allies, and then sometimes they just suddenly have a brain fart and become. You just sit there and look and go, oh, God.
yeah,
You actually
and
consider this.
and you can blame McNamara from that.
Yeah.
That's literally McNamara. And the British look and go, TSR2's a failure. You want to spend how much to get F-111? And then you have what becomes Tornado sitting there on a desk, and they go, it's going to be cheaper to do Tornado. And they do Tornado.
I don't think Sea-Dollars has Ukraine at the moment. I think Ukraine has Ukraine.
No, I'm talking about the carrier Ukraine.
Yeah. Soviet Ukraine.
Yeah, Sovetska Ukraina, the first keel-up carrier in the Red Fleet timeline. Obviously, we've been over, like, I don't think anyone is going to object to the... I mean, despite how heavily missiled they are, I don't think... Does anyone object to the way that the Stalingrads and Soyuz are rebuilt after the Cuban Missile Crisis, given it's Khrushchev putting them in for it, and his obsession with missiles, the fact they retain any guns at all is amazing.
I mean, he
Khrushchev
is
was,
the guy.
was also obsessed with other things other than missiles.
Corn!
No,
I mean,
it was actually he was obsessed with missiles, and he was obsessed with submarines and really long range torpedoes. Really long range torpedoes.
He's also the guy that starts the IT-1 project, which is okay. The 100 mil on the T-55 is on METs is brilliant, and the 120 is brilliant. But what if we made it a missile instead? Because the missile is the future.
And to be fair, that did lead to that did lead to every Soviet guided missile carrier that followed, and you can't really fault the man for that.
I can. Because in the MBT role, you really don't want to use a guided missile.
Well, yes, but
Yeah, I'll stop being pedantic.
there we go. There she is. Excellent. So, I don't obviously, as we know, her actual armament is laid out in a way that would cause catastrophic accidents. So we will ignore that, given that again, she's not supposed to be as a one-to-one replica, but as a rough size of ship, I don't really have any objections with her, if I'm honest. Armament would need a complete rework, but in terms of size of ship and the way in which, you know, the Soviets have learned, probably not just from operating the Graf Zeppelin as a straight deck carrier, but also as observing other powers, you know, side lifts, 3 cats, properly angled flight deck.
It's not a bad approximation.
Yeah. It's probably what you'd expect. About not quite a super carrier, so like probably midway-ish size, but if Midway was built from the keel up as an angled flight deck carrier rather than a, you know, conversion. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, no problems there. Though we do come to the first thing I do want to say. Given that they're not keeping Graf Zeppelin, instead of building just one, do they build 2? Like, how many Ukrainers do they build?
2
2?
or 4.
Well, it depends. How many fleets do they want to have them?
So basically, bear in mind, in 92 they lay down these, and in 68 they they begin designing their first conventional supercarriers, the Kievs, and then they lay 4 of them down in 70. So you
Well, have to
probably
remember, they did start off with the 4 Kievs, which came after the Moskva.
yeah.
So I would say they probably get 4 of these, and then they'd be working on their 4 in the next generation.
That's fair.
And the last of the Kievs would be last of these would be a transition to the next generation. Like the last Kiev is a transition to.
I suppose. The problem is this is still
Again,
their
it's an
first.
iterative design structure. It's basically because Moskva is what they start off with, but in this scenario, they started off with the Graf Septinsky.
Yeah, Vladimir
And
Lenin.
so, and then they've got another one, which their adaptation. It's their own original build version of that, hasn't they?
Yeah, I would still say that I'm leaning.
So they've
more
had
towards...
their two initial Moskva equivalents. So the next class is going to be their Kiev's equivalents, which if it's the Ukraine, it's going to be 4, isn't it?
Well, no, the Ukraine is the second one. Graf Zeppelin is the first, and the Ukrainians are the second. So
Well, then probably you get if you've got Graf Zeppelin as well, and if you consider that semi-operational, you're probably going to get 2 to 3 of these.
yeah, so that's what I was thinking. 2 to these, and Zeppelin is still a straight deck carrier at this point. She hasn't been rebuilt at all.
Well, the only reason I'd put on 3 is because, let's be honest, Zeppelin isn't going to be your long-term carrier, and if you want to start off your carrier aviation, which navies are going to have carriers?
The British, well, a lot of them actually, given what we've done.
No, for the Soviets, which navies are going to have carriers? Which fleets?
Pacific and North, aren't they?
Yeah, Pacific and North, not Baltic or Black.
Okay. So how many ships do you need to sort out to provide you with a carrier capability in the Pacific, and how many to provide you carrier capability in the North?
4.
4, basically, to provide you with something in the areas. So that's what you're going to be aiming for, and then you're going to be aiming to grow from that.
Yeah. So 4 Ukrainers, which will be coming in... Let's see, when are these actually... Actually, that's the point. Where's the bloody... Where is the... Oh, no wonder things are missing. Hang on.
He's got the wrong file open, hasn't he?
No.
Do you know what? I've just spent £110 on wood. Guess how much I've got? What do you think £110 worth of wood has bought? £110 of wood is?
I dread to think.
40 meters of 4x2 in 10 3-meter sections.
It's gonna cost
10
you.
pieces of yeah, that's 110 quid. Just worked out that's the 6th time I've bought that amount of wood for this roof.
Where the hell did I put the?
Yes, $C. Alex does have a lot of wood. It's a cost which sadly I've always been blessed with.
Cancel that. Where the heck did I put that? Where on earth did I put that? Because we're missing. Yeah, we are missing. Ah, there it is, right at the bottom. I knew there was something I'd forgotten. And good, we haven't moved past it. Right. So, good. We haven't actually missed it by too much. Thank God for that. So, 1956, the Japanese acquisition of a pair of old Independence-class light carriers and prop air groups to deter Graf Zeppelin appearing.
At
If
least
she
you no longer
appears.
have them buying the Enterprise.
Yeah, we changed that. But is that the problem I have
Oh
is
yeah,
the,
that
prob-
was
the, prob-
such
the
a
problem
good idea.
the problem I have with this is that given that it's just Graf Zeppelin at this point,
Again,
Can't-
Joe McCarthy. You're dealing with McCarthyism era. That's the trouble.
so as in
You're not dealing with a reality in terms of analysis. You're dealing with red is under the bed, the Red Scare.
so basically this is kind of this kind of keeps Japan on side basically, and it's
Yeah.
kind of prove to us we can trust you basically.
Almost everything is excusable as long as it allows you to beat the Reds.
Fair enough. So that's fair
And
enough.
also, the idea of NATO hasn't yet ossified.
Yeah.
So even everyone's going to be more militant because you don't know who's going to turn on you. I'm looking at you, France.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now
they
we
were worried about about communist takeovers in both in Germany. They're worried about communist takeover in France. They're worried about communist takeover in Italy.
Communism.
UK.
Communism as far as the eye can see.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm quite. McCarthy's America also throws up a fuss about the Attlee governments.
Yeah. They are really worried. They really think Labour Party in the UK is are all secretly communists, whereas what they really are is, in many ways, capitalism light.
That'll do. It's not the it'll do. It's not the perfect one, but it will do. So, 1962. CVA-01. Right. So, we've got the Japanese planning to buy a pair of ships. And this is all in response to the new Soviet carriers, the 4 new carriers the Soviets are going to build. So, Japan's looking to buy 2. This is what's currently written. Japan looks to buy 2. India looks to possibly express an interest in 1. The UK is convinced to build 1 because the Japanese are building 1, but doesn't see CVA-1 as a replacement. The buy-in is now 3. 2 definite with 1 option, which is India. Australia and Canada also opt for for one carrier each. Now here's the
Well, the
thing.
British at this point have 5 carriers, don't they? In this
Yeah.
new timeline, they have 5 carriers. They're sent form, and plus they have whatever light fleets over around acting as LPHs, etc.
With the Maltas having slight angle decks, and given it's 62 at this point,
Yeah.
when would the British Audacious have gone in for a refit to an angled deck? When would they have gone in? Considering they came in...
Well, they're probably going for their refit about historically, which is basically early to mid-60s.
So at that point, then, if that's the case, then, if we're looking at CVA1 in being considered in 62, and you've got the 2 Maltas already having the slight angled decks needed to operate the full range of British aircraft,
Yeah.
and 3 Audaciouses which can't, and you're looking to buy new carriers, would the buy-in be 3 CVA1 to replace the Audaciouses for the British?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially they'd replace the Audaciouses with the CVO1s, then they'd be eventually replace the Maltas with the CVO4s.
Yeah, although you probably have the Maltas getting a slightly more angled deck as a small rebuild in the interim as well.
Well, it depends what they're given when it's beginning, because they might be given quite a big thing.
Yeah, if they're being built keel up, they probably would be, yeah.
And they are basically from the keel. The only thing that's laid down much of them is the keel.
Yeah. So the...
It's
the-
also... I can just...
I'd also say, Scoot, if they're replacing the Audaciouses with the CVO1s and they've got the Maltas, they're not going to go for the smallest of the CVO1 designs. They're going to go for the 68,000 probably, or at least the 6. There's the 64,000, which was the second largest, I think. So they're probably going for that.
And also, how big those aircraft carriers probably will also depend on how does the fleet air ram transition from second to third gen aircraft.
Yeah.
You might, if you've got a large force, and also if you've got CVA1 coming down the pipeline, especially 3 of them, and you've got firm interest from the Japanese as well, for probably not a pair but 3 ships, and you've got the Indians expressing the interest in buying... Actually, the Indians will probably want to buy the Audacious class outright.
Yeah, and the thing is, the thing is, the British might be happy to sell them the Audaciouses, but I'm not sure if the British will be happy to sell them the CVO1s. Because
No.
from India, you have to remember at this point, is not trusted.
Yeah, like selling them 3 straight deck Audacious, which the Indians then have to put money into to get them to be modern jet capable, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yes, it's not going to be... So yeah, the Audaciouses probably go to India.
Which means Japan's getting in on a CVA1 build. Probably Australia is as well, because
Yeah.
they need to replace their Majestics.
This is the
Canada
thing.
won't be.
The only... Yeah. So saying take Canada off that list of buy-in. So don't have a Canada buy-in for a CVA1.
That's right. Nice way, the governments you're dealing with in the 70s?
This is 62 when the consultation is beginning.
Yeah, you must remember, we were talking about the governments which come... we're talking about the governments of...
yeah.
John Diefenbaker and Lester B. Parson. And, you get Pierre Trudeau, i.e. Justin Trudeau's papa, from 68 to 79. But he's going to be a bit late for the decision-making process. It's going to be John Diefenbaker. It's going to be Parson.
Yeah.
It's going to be Parson's government.
So we've got a buy-in for 3 from
Pearson,
the UK being pretty much keen. If the
Yeah.
Japanese... Would the Japanese be wanting to build at home with British license, or would they be wanting to just have the buy-in from British yards if they want to build 3?
Possibly the first one built under British, built in a British yard, so they get the tech and they get on it, and then build a further 2 at home.
It's the Congos again!
Pretty much, it's a some policy, and the Australians will probably want to do the same thing.
So I don't think the Australians, I think 3 Majestics
Well, they need to replace
is
the
fine.
Majestics at the point.
3 Majestics
Replace
is
them.
fine, but I don't think the Australian budget can stretch to 3 CVA1. I think,
Well, they'll be replacing the Majestics.
yeah,
And again, This is Australia, which is a nicest way at this point. I would say the Australian Army is probably basically a National Guard infantry association
Yes.
in this scenario.
What year we're talking about?
It's 62 when
1960s.
it's 62 when these
60s.
consultations open, and these ships are laid down 63, 64. Depending on how long the consultations take. And bear in mind, if you're looking... Also, there is a point in terms of buying them. If the buy-in is 6 CVA01, before the Australians even get involved, that's already brought the unit cost way down.
Yeah. So the thing is, the thing that's going to be differential in cost is if they want to build, if they want to do like the Japanese, build 1 in Britain and 2 domestically.
It'd probably be the reverse: 2 in Britain, 1 domestic. That would probably be how it would be. So you have the 2 built in Britain, and then you basically build the 3rd one domestically, kind of as a kit, if that makes sense. Not quite the same way.
I would say you
but...
probably build 2 as a kit, in the nicest way, because they're going to want to have that as a part of a national jobs program.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I see that.
So whereas the Japanese will be building from scratch 2 at home, the Australians will already be building 2 as a kit because they want to look like they're investing. The government wants to look like it's investing in defense infrastructure. Doesn't want to actually pay the money to invest in defense infrastructure.
Yeah. Knowing
Okay,
knowing
so
the rivalry...
quickly.
Sorry, you first.
So, just to clarify, is Australia still
forgot to change the
getting involved into the Vietnam War?
Yes,
The
yes, they
Americans
are.
got in.
But again, remember,
that's something I need to bring up.
That was SAS and infantry formations that were going there, and that's basically.
Yeah.
I could see their army being incredibly focused on that. So that basically their army probably becomes basically the equivalent to the Royal Marines.
But they are also, but this also just spark a large-scale series of re-equipping and re-equipment in the
Yeah.
Australian army. So the army's actually getting quite a lot of funding in this period. So
It is, but I would just point out that, I mean, did we decide that we were actually going to have the British go into Vietnam? Because that was something in the Red
Think we
Fleet
said-
timeline that they went into Vietnam in a limited way because they wanted to get American cheap American loans and stuff while they're working on CVA01.
I
don't see
I-
the British going to Vietnam.
no, the,
Yeah,
the
but
British
that's
aren't going to Vietnam.
yeah, that's something I have been quite eager to remove. And to be fair, even getting the biggest CVA01 carrier, that's still not stupidly expensive if you're building 9 of the bloody things.
Yeah, that's the thing, is if you've got that many people getting involved in building them, constructing them, suddenly it's a case of, oh, well, this is financially going to make sense because of Britain. It's going to be a case of, oh, this is a jobs creation program for us, and we are selling and earning a lot of money from this.
It's just got to get through the austerity politics.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you've already got the drumbeat of naval construction has continued through the 40s, through the 50s, into the 60s. That's gone on. And while austerity is a thing in the UK, that's true. This government spending will have been driving the economy. And if you've got and while the civil service is many things, one thing they do like to salivate over, even if they are austerity-minded governments and civil service, is they do love some good, sweet, sweet arms exports. And is this not the biggest arms export of the century for the British?
Well, it's not just that, because they won't just be exporting the aircraft carriers. Think about it, because it's going, well, you know, we've got an aircraft carrier. We've also got a design for a destroyer called the Type 82 to defend them. And it comes with a missile system. And its radars will integrate in this system, and this system builds up. And also, there's a fighter development program, and there's a strike aircraft development program for these aircraft carriers.
The problem you've got, Chandler Lord, is it's not so much that other people can't buy in, it's that what are the options? So, the Japanese are buying in. They need to massively upgrade their carriers. They have the money to. The Australians might not have the money, but they kind of need to anyway. No, the Australians are still involved in NAM, but it's mostly light infantry compared to some of the heavier assets they sent historically. And also, to be fair, these carriers can probably chip in towards the end as well, given they come in, finish build 68.
Yeah.
But also then you've got who else? Who else could be a customer? The Netherlands are happy with their light fleet for what they need it to do. They're not looking at it as a strike carrier by the mid-60s, and they're not looking at a replacement either. The Italians are not looking at a replacement. The French are looking at a replacement, but they're building their own because France. The Brazilians. The problem.
I have
the
something for you which is fun with that one. Just before you jump too far on, Australian Buccaneers could be taking part in the Vietnam War,
which would be funny. But the problem with the South American nations is this is something that I need to bring up. We overbulked the South American nations to an insane degree. US aid or not, there's no way they're operating fleet carriers. Not a Ukraine and knockoff for Brazil, and definitely not an Essex that the Argentinians have been sold. It's too much money. The light fleets are this lovely sweet spot of being just capable enough to be worth it, but just cheap enough to be affordable for Brazil and Argentina.
but I think that could be an interesting thing.
It's not so much the upfront cost that's the problem, it's maintaining them.
Yeah.
You can run a light fleet and crew a light fleet as a power like Brazil and Argentina, but it's only in the late 80s, early 90s that Brazil gets the manpower and the funding to be able to crew something like Clemenceau, which they then buy.
Okay, I've now got another question for everyone, and this is one which I think the chat will want to get involved in. So let's say the Australians do deploy Blackburn Buccaneers along with Phantoms as their air group for their CVO-1s in the late time in Vietnam. Well, it would be Phantoms because, let's be honest, it's in a nice way, unless the British are providing a fighter. And also, that'd be a good way for the Australians to keep on with the Americans. They've bought the British carrier, the British strike aircraft. We bought Phantom fighters.
Because they wouldn't have to be adapted.
Okay.
They wouldn't have to be adapted.
So about that. So, CVA-01...
Can I finish my question quickly, Fox?
Sorry, sorry, I did.
The question is going to be, what is the impact on the Americans of them seeing Buccaneers doing Buccaneer doctrine over Vietnam?
Vark, but earlier.
And we get the Vark to do it.
Yeah.
But
so, quickly, on the point, so TSR-2 and CVO-1, they'll be looking at aircraft for CVO-1, related to Buccaneer, because they were supposed to be replaced by the time CVO-1 came out. And TSR-2 would have fallen through.
Yeah.
And there's a very good chance that in this timeline, Tornado isn't a land-based aircraft.
No,
it's a naval aircraft.
Oh no! No, not this again.
Only if it's built from the start with the idea of a rough script capability. It can't be going on that airframe. It's going to be a very different airframe.
But the period where the Tornado project is starting is the period where they're looking to replace the carrier aircraft, and TSR-2's fallen through. So the idea of having one strike craft that can do both as a cost-saving measure.
I mean,
well, it's either that or it's potentially the Buccaneer number 3, which was supersonic and was going to have air-to-air missiles on it as well.
Yeah, I think Superbuck is definitely the way to go. I understand I think for the British carriers, you are probably going to see something. Not Tornado. I think you'll still see Tornado.
Tornado's too much of a joint program with the Germans and the others involved.
You'll still see Tornado as is. But what I reckon you will see is, given that this is the 60s of the era when Japan is just about recovering its aviation industry, the idea of a joint air fighter, since a single-purpose fighter is still something that carriers need at this point, developed jointly with the Japanese, basically to enable the British aerospace industry to shoulder the cost of such a project, is something I can realistically see. What form that aircraft would take, I have no bloody idea.
To answer the question on the airborne early warning aircraft, it's going to be Hawkeye, because that's going to be part of... It's going to be sound strange, but it's going to be a way for the British to make the Americans happy that people are buying British carriers.
Yeah, you might get Brit... I mean, it depends on how much
You can get a Hawkeye. A Hawkeye could operate from C-everyone, especially the larger ones. It could operate from the Maltas.
And I mean, come on,
the
it's
thing
Hawkeye.
is,
It's good. It's good stuff.
fine.
It's good stuff. Hawkeye's good stuff.
And let's be honest, the trouble is for the Brits is they don't really need to build as many aircraft as the Americans. So going into a single program for that would operate from the British carriers, the American carriers, the Australian carriers. It might be Hawkeye is more of a joint program than it was historically.
You might have the British contribution could be turboprops. Brit turboprops under the wings.
And it could be that the British have a second production line in the UK.
Yeah. And the
Because
Japanese
we're
have
happy
one.
to do that.
And the Japanese can have one, because for the Japanese, Hawkeye can not only be a carrier aircraft, it can be their first proper AEW,
Yeah,
even on land.
that's the thing. You've got Hawkeye could be pretty darn useful. It could also, in nicest way, Hawkeye could also end up being the British airborne early warning on land as well. The government cost reduction of, this program actually uses a British component, so we'll go for that one, rather than get the Sentry, even though the Sentry is what we really need for what we're doing. Which does lead to all sorts of interesting things, because the British are involved in the Hawkeye program, and it's a Hawkeye program to this day, then that's going to also drive British carrier development and keep British carriers Cadabar, because that's going to be a joint program for the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force in terms of procuring their Hawkeyes.
Now, I do want to talk about something. We spoke in a bit of detail about selling the 3 Audacious classes straight deck carriers as is to India. Now, I would like to raise some things. Firstly, India at this point is still Soviet leaning, and Pakistan is American leaning. So, do we think the Americans would block the sale or try to get, I don't know, 2 and 1? So like
they didn't historically.
Yeah, but that was a light fleet going to India, not an Audacious class. Not 3 Audacious
Are they really
class.
going to view an Audacious class as that much better at this point? Especially straight decked Audacious.
True. Given what the Indians will have to do. Question is, does Pakistan receive a large briefcase full of money to buy, I don't know, 1 or 2 of the Australians now not needed light fleets?
Probably not, because Pakistan really doesn't. Pakistan doesn't want them.
Yeah, I know.
India has the reason for it because of its exposure. And to an extent, how do I put this politely? The Americans kind of like the Indians having, because whilst the Indians are Soviet leaning, they don't like the Soviets hanging around in their Indian Ocean either. The Indians basically don't like anyone hanging around in their ocean. Come visit, we'll be friendly, don't hang around.
Yeah. And of course, if the Indians cato-bar those carriers to an insane degree, then that's a market for US aircraft.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing, is which aircraft they're going to put on, because traditionally the light fleets, of course, end up with Sea Harriers.
But these are Audaciouses, not light fleets. So
yeah, and these are Cadabar carriers. So what are they going to take? What are they going to fit? Are they going to try and get Soviet aircraft on a British carrier?
Because the Soviets will have Cadabar aircraft, won't they? Yeah.
Yeah. In which case, that gives the British all sorts of access to information, because they'll need to consult the Brits about the catapult system and everything.
Yeah.
So the British will need all the data to be able to advise them if the carrier can take it.
Yeah, which will probably mean that the Soviets will probably look at that and go, no, we're not
That's
gonna.
happened historically. In which case, India then has to buy either from Britain or from America.
and America is the safer choice because, well, because
Historically, they bought from Britain.
well, they
bought
could
the
do.
Harrier.
They could do. I mean, it's
So
possible.
again, you could get them buying Buccaneers from the British.
Yeah,
or
they
things.
could basically take the old jet stock from the Maltas once the Maltas are refitted to take the new jets from the that could fit on CVA-01. Because
Yeah.
at that point those older jets will give you enough for one carrier air wing active and one in reserve, which is what you would expect the Indians to have. They wouldn't have enough air wings for all three carriers. You'd have one active air wing and one for training, which gives you a rough ability to surge 2 carriers.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question for everyone in the chat. Okay, don't look it up, but just put in the chat. How many air wings do you think the U.S. Navy currently operates for its carriers?
That's my guess.
They have 11 carriers, so this is the clue. How many air wings do you think they have?
I've made my
22.
guess.
1.
They have 9.
Hey, I was only one
Fleet's
short.
close, and the fleet's not wrong. They operate 9 air wings for 11 carriers.
You rarely have as many air wings as you have carriers, because it's very unlikely that you're going to have all of your carriers active, even for the US. Like, you want the ability to surge, because they have, active in peacetime, it's 5 to 6, I think? And they want the ability to surge to 8. Short term. And then they can build up to all 11 if they need to by training new crew.
They try to operate 4 at all times. They want the ability to surge to 6. And they'd love to have the ability to operate all 11, but the reality is that usually about 2 out of 11 carriers are in long-term refit.
Yeah.
That's the reality. This is the argument against. This is actually one of the arguments put against increasing their carrier strength to 12 carriers, is they'd have to stand up a 10th air wing.
But isn't that only having 9 air wings pretty short-sighted?
No, not at all.
So it gives you very little loss tolerance.
Oh, yes, it does. It's entirely peacetime only. In wartime, you would actually need more, because you would need the capability to expand. But they have some pools of personnel in other areas, and realistically, their plan has always been somewhat of a thing of call up people who are reservists and former aviators, train them up, and train up as many youngsters as they can, and hope they can fill up the losses. But
if anyone has the pipeline to even attempt that, it is the US, but it's still ambitious.
Yes, it's a pipeline on paper. In real life, it's more of a read.
Yeah. Okay, so we now come to 60. So we've got the 3 Russian new carriers coming down, the Sovietsky Ukraine class. We've got. Then we get into 63. So I have here that the French scrap Richelieu in 63 to provide spares to a refitted Jean Bar to extend her life. And then they buy an Alaska to replace Richelieu. But obviously both Alaskas are going, one to the Netherlands, one to...
Wait, I think I'm going to have to bow out. Apparently the hot water tank is leaking.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
I do apologise. I'm having plumbing fun, but I think I better go check on it. I will... If I can be back, I will be back, but I will just leave for now. I do apologise, everyone, but I better go.
That's fine.
Deal with that. Hot water tanks leaking is never a good thing. Admittedly, this is on the ground floor, so it's not going to leak anywhere else, but it's still leaking.
Oh. How long have we been going? Jesus Christ, we've been going for 3 hours. I didn't even... That's gone by quick. So... I will just get through this quickly. So... Jean Bar being refitted to extend her life. I mean, you could do it. She is a much fresher ship than Richelieu was. And if you've got Richelieu providing spares, it could be done.
I think sacrificing one of them to keep the other going is not necessarily the best here, though.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's like, do you just... In 63, the French will have both their carriers. I think both Clemenceau's commission around that point. And in this timeline, do they build 3, not 2? because, if you are the
'Cause
French,
You said in
and looking at
63 she's being scrapped.
Richelieu's scrapped in 63 to basically become a spares donor. to
That's
keep
weird,
Jean Bart going.
considering in 63 she was in active reserve.
Yeah, they're making a choice to deliberately break her up while she's still somewhat fresh to provide a spares donor to Jean Bart.
Well, in 1956 she's put into reserve and then used as a training vessel and barrack ship. It's only then in 67 that they decide that now she has outlived her usefulness.
Yeah.
Jean Bart also put into reserve in 57. So realistically speaking, in fact, she's not even kept as a barrack ship that long. She's only kept as a ship until 61. After that, she's just left abandoned.
Yeah, I know, but obviously that's not what's happened in Red Fleet, since there's a reason for for Jean Bart to remain around as an active combatant, or at least semi-active. And this is me making a choice to, you kind of do have to break up.
If you're scrapping one in 63, you're scrapping both in 63.
Why? Why can't you use the spares to keep Jean Bart going a little bit longer?
Because they ain't spares anymore.
Because Rishi's in bad condition.
Richelieu doesn't
And-
get the same amount of work. Go on, sorry.
So Rishi's in bad condition. For the actual big ticket items that you can't easily machine and replace, her components aren't spares. Because they're in worse conditions than Jean Bart.
Because what has Richelieu been doing in the post-war period? Because historically, she actually had incredibly light service.
That's true.
Yeah.
And even then, she was still relatively...
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's possible you do see the French procure 3 carriers and just decide that they're going to lean on their carriers for dealing with the Soviet surface threat than, any form of surface asset.
It's more just it's too much of a problem. And
yeah, if your
they
option
can't
is
use Rishi for parts.
yeah, if
They can keep Jean Bart going, but the fact that Jean Bart historically was just basically left abandoned.
yeah, I mean, if you've got I think I'll change that, so I'll have a third. Given that there's more money going around for navies generally in the Red Fleet timeline, not much, but enough. I think at that point you just build 3 Clemenceau class carriers. And that gives you that's
Okay, paradoxically, Richelieu's in significantly better condition than Jean Bart from what I'm reading.
The problem is Jean Bart got the full refit, whereas Rishi didn't.
I mean, at
Yeah.
this point, I'm more leaning towards just getting rid of both.
So Jean Bart throughout her career had severe issues due to her treatment in World War II. Richelieu's relatively light service meant that she was overall in much better condition.
So
Jean Bart
what I'm hearing here,
had
realistically,
endemic issues with her hull due to being virtually abandoned after 1941 and then getting shot up by the Americans.
Yeah, the more I'm
So,
hearing this, the more I'm
Jean
going.
Bart was so. Jean Bart's refit and modernization was because she was going to take that long to repair. But if the French are throwing more money around, there's a good chance they would have done the refit to Richelieu as well, because they want to do the refit to Richelieu as well. And if Richelieu receives the refit, if you get rid of Jean Bart, you can arguably keep Rishi
That's what I was
around
gonna
the
say.
same way you can keep
potentially you
Vanguard
actually have a
around.
1960s refit of Richelieu.
The problem that I have with that, I'm not saying that is probably the best way to keep a heavy capital ship in service for the French, and I'll agree with you on that. The problem I have is that the extra money that the French had in the early period, we already agreed was going on buying an extra light fleet for their
Of course.
navy. And honestly, having 3 Clemenceau class carriers is better than retaining either Jean Bart or Richelieu.
Of course, there's the cursed thing that fleet will absolutely despise, but the French actually were quite all for.
Don't say it. Don't you dare. Don't you fucking
Aviation
dare.
battleship.
Oh, that wasn't where I thought you were going. But that's also fucking
But
cursed.
there was
in the,
also
in the
a
50s, they wanted to convert. Likely, it would be Jean Bart, and basically, you know where her aft 6 inches
Yes,
in the
I know
hangar,
what
turn that
the
into a
Jean.
flight deck.
No, that's a terrible idea, and I'm glad they
It's
didn't do it.
actually not though
It
for the
is.
Jean Bart.
It is.
Like,
It's
so
a horrific
Richelieu and Jean Bart,
idea.
it's actually like
Battle
they are
carriers
literally
are
the best ship
yes.
for it. And in this post-war world,
It's still a shit idea.
no, it's not.
Yes,
because
it is.
all of a sudden, no, it's not, because all of a sudden now you have a very good platform for additional helicopter and anti-submarine vessels.
That's
So
Or
no, we're
and she's
not.
no longer
Dragon.
and she's no longer necessarily going to be engaging in a active gunfight,
Then why just
because you have her as a fleet command unit, which is a multi-purpose thing. She can do bombardment if needed. If she does end up in a gunfight, she wins the gunfight on average, unless the enemy are sending Soyuz at her, and probably more than one.
Yeah.
And then she's also got short support capabilities.
There's only
Or-
one Soyuz.
Yep. Which should be a
So,
source in Stalingrad. So
But
no,
this- and
no.
she will
Soyuz,
be able- and she will
Soyuz doesn't
slap.
leave the Baltic after she's rebuilt. She's
and
too
they
slow.
will, and she would slap a Stalingrad.
She would again, but I
So,
would.
unironically,
But also, I'm going to push back
the
on this
French
because
might have been right here.
No, battle carriers have always been and always will be a terrible, chronically bad idea. They
extra
are
helicopters
they are the worst
change
of.
that.
They are even with helicopters, the worst, the best. They're not battle carriers; they're amphibious assault ships. If you must go that route, which I still think you shouldn't, just build a dedicated amphibious assault helicopter carrier instead.
So I've got a more realistic option for you then.
I mean, I'd just rather we go
So
with the 3
in
carriers.
1956,
Can we just go with the 3 carriers,
No.
please?
there was a proposal. Actually, no, sorry, 1961. Wait, no, this is
Right.
1959. Sorry, in 1959 there was a proposal to refit Richelieu into a modern anti-aircraft combatant, which included reworking the aft of the ship and removing the aft turrets, and replacing them with a set of 4 Talos twin arm launchers.
That's not possible. She
And-
can't carry more than 1. There is
It's
no.
claim-
I don't care what they claim, Fox. So it's not fucking possible.
Okay, hear me out, because this is how they're saying it's possible. That would share all 4 arm launchers would share a pair of missile factories and a singular large magazine in the aft of the ship.
There still isn't
This
the room
would
for that.
also be combined with 2 twin arm Terrier launchers on either side of the hull. French believed they could pull this off in 1959.
This is.
It was rejected due to cost overruns and the deteriorating condition of Jean Bart and the lack of spare parts.
I mean, never mind cost overruns. These people are living in a fucking fantasy land. There's not fucking room for more than 1 bloody Talos magazine and 1 bloody factory line. Never mind 2 other bloody things, and never mind bloody Terrier launchers as well. I don't know who these designers were, but they were living in a fucking fantasy land of la bullshit. It's fucking not possible. If you want to carry...
I would believe Okay, it's the French in the late 50s and 60s, I'll give you that. But they did think it was possible.
You want her to have a single.
And
You want her to have a single Talos launch draft? Absolutely, that's just about doable. Maybe you get a Terrier as well. But anything more than that is just not viable. It's not viable. It's not doable. There's not the room.
But I said, honestly, at this period,
no, okay. The thing that makes you think this is possible is because they're sharing factories. So functionally, there's only the internal volume space needed for 2. And however, they share arm launchers, which would give the Talos an even slower rate of fire, but it would give them a higher volley chance, higher volley mass, which means that it's the actually volume intensive part of Talos. They're only running 2 of them, with the actual protruding deck arms being 2 per factory, which deck space is the one thing these ships would have aft.
Yeah.
like, this is why I'm saying battle carriers / these things, the Jean Barts are actually like the perfect design.
They are
for.
they are the best platform for this, but again, I still lean back to the whole 3 carriers is a much better option for just long-term French maritime power.
If you can afford the 3 carriers, probably.
And this is the
But if
thing:
you
the
did
amount
still want
of
to retain
the only
some
reason
heavy gun
Oh,
action,
okay.
the only
Okay, I'm
reason
just
that
gonna point out-
can I just finish my point
Okay.
quickly?
Go on.
The only reason I brought up the whole thing of Jean Bart and the Richelieus was to discuss possible options, not with a goal that retaining them was the desirable outcome. Given what we've discussed and the costs involved to keep them combat relevant or do anything to them in a manner we're discussing, and given the fact that the extra money wouldn't have gone into rebuilding Richelieu as well as Jean Bart in the early period, given it went to an extra Colossus or Majestic, my thought process would be, at that point then, if you're going to spend money in this period, you spend it on a 3rd Clemenceau. You don't spend it on keeping these battleships around.
Sorry, I just found something cursed that Fleet will love.
I somehow doubt this, but
So, there was a proposal in 1960 with the advent and French interest in the UGM-27 Polaris. And
here we
to
go.
create a second strike option by rebuilding the aft of Richelieu and Jean Bart to carry between 6 and 8 Polaris missiles. That would function with WB-57 initially W-58 nuclear warheads and later French nuclear warheads to act as France's second strike nuclear deterrence. I want to know how they would get Polaris working off the back of a battleship.
Nope, shutting it down. Nope.
But this was a proposal that was seriously considered.
Yes, I know, and I've shot it down every single time it's come up. No ballistic missiles on battleships or surface ships of any kind. It's a dumb fucking concept. Moving on.
Coward.
No, smart.
Coward.
Fuck you.
Coward. My Richelieu should be able to launch 1.2 megaton nuclear warheads.
Anyway, so 1964, the US completes a big gun service combatant loosely based on the B-65 and delivers to the Japanese. All in favor of just ripping that out. There's no fucking point for that thing to exist. Literally no fucking point. Why does Japan need a big gun service combatant? It's already getting 3 modern carriers. There is no fucking point.
symbol of national pride.
But it's been built in America.
Mm,
Like the symbol of national pride is the carriers that have been built in Japanese yards.
Yeah, but it just seems like you're getting rid of the whole point of the scenario at this point, which is.
No.
But what if battleships stuck around?
No, the whole point of the scenario wasn't if battleships stuck around. That's what it turned into, but that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point at all. The point was, what if the Soviets completed Sovietsky Soyuz and got Graf Zeppelinsky? The only reason that battleships have lasted as long as they have is because the Russians have got some battle cruisers. We're coming to a point now where that's probably going to change.
It's going to change after the Falklands War, when it's going to swing back the other way, if I remember correctly.
No, it's you're already looking at probably the mid-70s. The Russians looking to replace the Yeah, so when we get to the late 80s, we're going to have a look at the other thing. So obviously the Kievs are probably unchanged in 68, so the 4 new conventional supercarriers. But I would also say at this point, you're probably looking at the Russians wanting to start also looking at a replacement for the Stalingrads. Given that at this point in 68, they've been in service since 53. Actually, no, 53 is still... They've still got a bit of life left in them. Given their rebuilds. They've got a bit of life left in them.
What has life left in them?
The Stalingrads in 68, they've still got life left in them.
Double standards all around.
What? Yeah, but the Stalingrads are brand new in 53.
Yeah?
So, in 68, they've still got life left in them. It's the mid-70s they're going to bow out, I think. Oh, yeah, so yeah, design work would probably begin in 68, with a plan to phase in the Stalingrad's replacement by the mid-70s. But working on it slowly, given you're probably going to want the 4 Kiev-class supercarriers built at the same time. In that case, then, it probably would be... Given the design for Soviet heavy surface ships at this point, you're probably still looking at a... Just to look at the ship that was actually laid down and considered in this period. You're probably looking at combined steam gas turbine for the power plant. So, and you're looking at a ship of around, probably, if you're not carrying the same level of guns, which you probably wouldn't be at this point, given that the Stalingrads they've lost their rear gun turret at this point, and they're carrying missiles as their primary armament.
Actually, I can tell you this exactly. What year they're doing this?
So the designs are being worked up in 68, planning to be laid down in 70, like one every year until they're all in service by the 80s.
In 68, you said?
Yeah.
68 Brezhnev. Bum, bum, ba, 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 ba.
Maybe they carry a new generation of Soviet rapid-fire 180. Something akin to the Russian version of the American 8-inch rapid-fire gun to retain that. But that's only if the Russians deem it necessary to retain some sort of heavy gun-armed ship. If they're replacing the Stalingrads.
He probably finished Brezhnev. And he went on a program of cutting down a lot of the unnecessary parts of the Red Army, Red Navy, and Red Air Force,
I mean, it's hard to argue. I mean,
and massed. Can I just finish? And did a series of mass sharings, including a significant reduction in the size of the officer corps for both the Army and the Navy.
mhm.
A part of me wants to say the Soviets don't replace them, or they get replaced by basically missile cruisers, an additional couple of missile cruisers.
No, that's what it'd be. No, like, the replacement would be missile cruisers. The only thing I'm saying is, do they have Soviet 130s as their biggest guns, or do they have some sort of fully automatic 180?
Probably not.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Because they'd probably be large combined steam gas missile cruisers, really heavy throwweight things, almost like an early version of the Kirovs in terms of size.
No. It's gonna get okay from what I'm reading.
Maybe.
Significant proponent of nuclear power on warships.
So
So
you
they-
might see the Kievs be nuclear supercarriers, not conventional.
Yes.
Which, okay,
There's
that,
also a significant proponent of an all-nuclear fleet
well, that would be a good
to
start to replace the
to
older...
standardize and reduce costs.
Hmm.
He also pushed for the armament of all surface combatants with nuclear weapons and the overall reduction aside from the submarine force.
Hmm. That's fair. I mean,
This is early in this time.
yeah. I mean, at that point then, you probably would see in 64, 68, you probably would see Svetsky Soyuz, even though it's only been a couple of years since her refit, off to the reserves in 68. You'd probably have...
museumed.
Yeah, probably. And Graf Zeppelinski with her, actually, probably put in a museum. We've got the 3 Ukrainers around. You might see the Russians start to build carriers in 3s. Especially if they're building a nuclear supercarrier force. So that gives you 3... And the idea will be 3 active, 3, second line, and then 3 on their way out. But obviously the 3 on the way out isn't there yet, because you'd need another generation after that to put the Ukrainers into the on their way out category.
I don't think you get 3. I think you get 2. Because from what I'm reading of his early career as premier, he saw nuclear power as a way of reliably downsizing Soviet commitments navally.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that he would go
And then
for...
you see 4 next generation nuclear supercarriers when you get the big push in the 80s to upscale the Soviet fleet again.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good way. That's a good way of doing it, Foxo. Yeah. So you get 2 nuclear supercarriers in the late end of the 60s to be finished in the mid 70s, and then at that point, you'd probably get the Stalingrads refitted with more modern weapon systems in terms of missiles, and probably an argument would be made for their retention, given they still have their aft helicopter decks.
Personally, I don't think you see the Stalingrads get refit.
Well, all the refit does is it swaps out their is it adds missiles and removes their rear turret in favor of a hangar deck and helipad.
Yeah, which is kind of goes against what we know.
Brezhnev would have done, yeah, since he's the one who called for it in the Red Fleet timeline, which he wouldn't do.
Unless you're saying Brezhnev doesn't come to power, but that's...
No, we're not changing leaders to keep it... Yeah, so in that case then,
Yeah.
Stalingrads haven't been refitted. They've just been... Well, they probably have been refitted, but not to the
if
level
they
that...
were refitted, it would have to be under Khrushchev. and Khrushchev is the missile fanatic.
Oh no, yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it. He was refit. It was they were refitted under Khrushchev. They re-emerge under Brezhnev. They get the missiles and their rear flight deck.
But
and
if
hangar.
they're not back by the time Khrushchev gets kicked out of office,
They are back just before. And Brezhnev is, and in the Red Fleet timeline, Brezhnev claims that, obviously it's political since he doesn't believe it, and he flips back to his normal tactic anyway. But they are granted a little bit of a stake as he claims publicly. If the Red Fleet had its modern surface units, the Cuban Missile Crisis could have been resolved in our favor. Blah blah blah. Bullshit. Which isn't true.
So, which is good and all, but a part of me is wondering, really thinks that the Stalingrads are going to fall prey to re-Stalinization. Because Khrushchev goes through a period of
Destalinization, yeah, I know.
Destalinization. That gets him kicked out of office, and that leads to re-Stalinization. And a lot of Khrushchev's works in a lot of the projects he goes, and a lot of the things he orders gets overturned because they're associated with him.
Now that
If Khrushchev has pushed the Stalingrads through, and then he gets kicked out of office, I could very much see the Stalingrads being got rid of, if anything, as a political maneuver.
No, the Stalingrads were a Stalin project. They are commissioned before he dies, and one of them was originally named Joseph Stalin, but was renamed after his death. Instead of them being a victim, Brezhnev is nothing if not... While Brezhnev is political, he's also a pragmatist in the extreme. And he's not going to throw away the 6 cores of any Soviet SAG. The ships that now rebuilt, despite how much he may not like them, can go toe-to-toe with any NATO service combatant, including in Iowa. Given their new missiles they have. And can provide helicopter support for an entire task group. Now, look. Brezhnev is... everything you've said about him is correct, and I completely agree. But there is a difference between being political and being actively self-destructive to the Soviet state. His reductions in the size of the Navy were political. They didn't actively destroy the Red Navy's ability to fight a war. Especially given the way things were changing in the period he did it. However, what you're talking about would be actively self-destructive to Soviet power. Which he's not going to do.
Because my thought would be, he's not going to get rid of them. But I can very much see it as a quiet exit stage left kind of thing. When the Soviet Navy starts to pick and choose what's, shall we say, got less of priority when it comes to maintenance and midlife refits.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, and I actually agree. I think the Stalingrads are basically going to be fresh when Brezhnev comes in. They're sticking. Soyuz actually started her refit earlier, so she'll finish it. Same with the Stalingrads, but she will very much be in the Baltic, just twiddling her thumbs, doing fuck all. Graf Zeppelinski will be very much on her way out. The 3 Ukrainas that were started are basically the Soviets' first keel-up carriers, and again, even though Brezhnev is wanting to downsize, that's
He's
still...
keeping the carriers.
Yeah, that's still 3 carriers that, most importantly, have already been paid for. So, yeah.
Well, it's sort of that he's one of the big proponents for the carriers.
So yeah, the Soviets' first three fleet carriers that are fully Katobar, yeah, is going to keep them.
Because he's a proponent of them, not because they're particularly useful, but because it's an active justification to reduce the size of land-based anti-shipping squadrons and break away a lot of the power the Red Air Force, political power the Red Air Force has.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's political shambuckery.
Yep. Oh, I didn't know you knew so much about this period, Foxo. I'm impressed.
Been reading up on it since I've got to keep correcting you.
I don't mind. But yeah, so the thing is, at that point, then by the time we get to the 68, I think work is going to focus in on the 4 new carriers, and the Red Fleet's going to basically be hoping that Brezhnev focuses on these 4 new, which are now not conventional nuclear supercarriers, and that he ignores everything else they're trying desperately to hold on to.
Yeah, I could do that.
At that point, you've got. Now, this is the interesting thing. It's at this point that you'd start to wonder about the Iowas, because at this point they will have been around on and off into the 70s. Given that you can't really retire them because you've got the all-weather flying still isn't a thing yet. There's still that possibility of a horrible storm. Stalingrad comes over the horizon, guns blazing. After having loosed its missiles, of course. If that makes sense. But basically, well, whether that's realistic or not, that's still the worst-case scenario fear, basically.
As much as I know you hate it, I think that Iowas are gone by the 70s, because I know what their replacement will be.
This was going to be my thing. What's the Well, no, they're not gone. They've replaced the North Carolinas and South Dakotas have gone to museums by the 70s, and it's the Iowas who are now back in the reserves in the 70s. They're not gone yet.
I think that aside, I can tell you exactly what's replaced them.
Yeah, this is going to be. I'm interested to hear what you got to say.
Has anyone here heard of this class of ship the US Navy really, really wanted and never got?
Which iteration?
Have you heard of Strike Cruiser 1970?
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. No, Foxo. No.
19...
Do you want to know something, Foxo? This is exactly one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. Because when I was rewatching my Red Fleet timeline, it didn't come. I was like, how the fuck did I forget Strike Cruiser? How the fuck did I forget Strike Cruiser as a concept? And it being and it basically being especially if it's on with an 8-inch gun, a clear counter to fucking the Stalingrads. And the US can probably afford to build more of them than the Stalingrads are.
Strike Cruiser 1970 is a counter to everything.
No, Foxo, you build 12 and you phase out the Des Moines and the Iowas completely. You replace both.
You don't build 12. You build 16. Because you've boosted the number of converted missile cruisers the US Navy has.
No. No, we haven't.
Yeah, because they've got additional conversions.
No, they don't.
Anyway.
But the reason that I'm saying that I want to build 12 is because I don't want to build Strike Cruiser. I want to build something a little bit. I want to build a bigger version. I want to go instead of 2 Mark 26s. I want I want to check if this is the right one. Yeah, so 2 Mark 26s is fine. But I want more launches for Harpoon and Tomahawk. I want 16 Tomahawk and I want 24 Harpoon. If not more than that. I want more. I want more anti-surface punch.
That's better. One of the other proposals for Strike Cruiser in 1970. But I do think you see a replacement of the battleships and the converted missile cruisers with just a block of 16 Strike Cruiser 1970.
Yeah, but bigger.
That's built over 6 years.
Yeah, with electric nuclear reactors. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's yeah. And that gives you the ability to put at least 1, maybe 2 with every US carrier strike group.
Yeah, and Strike Cruiser 1970 is probably what finally kills off any sort of big surface combatant.
Yeah, I think at that point the way forward is clear. Like that's where everything's going. That does lead to the interesting thing though. British. So we've already discussed. So we get in the counties. You get in the You get in the slightly different counties. You get in the more Sea Dart, which probably means you get better Sea Dart quicker as well. Like the Block 2 we got way late probably comes in early.
Yeah.
At that point, then I'm thinking. So yeah, Type 82 exists, but I am gonna say, well, what if we want something a bit embiggened?
You're probably not getting CDAR too early because it's an electronics issue, information processing issue that gets it delayed.
I don't know,
And we're not. I don't think we're putting any changes in that because I don't think either of us want to tackle that one. If you're changing that, you've got to change how the British are going towards actually towards computing and yeah.
When does the variants? So mod. Okay, well, we can probably get. Well, we can get mod 1.
Yeah, mod 1, yeah, mod 2, no.
Yeah, we could probably push mod 1 back a little bit, but not mod 2. We can probably get mod 1 pre-Falklands if we have that much in the fleet. If we have like 6 other counties carrying it in the mid-60s, then you've got Type 82, fleeted with like 6 ships in the RN, possibly more. And then obviously 42 also. If you've got that many Sea Dart users, there will be an impetus to improve the missile quicker.
Maybe. But it's still a guidance issue.
I know.
And it's that sort of thing of...
Yeah, but at that
The
point...
Americans are able to do it by... typical gunnery officer, but throwing a shit ton of money at it.
Yeah. I am thinking quickly. Friendship access to the... the North Carolinas and South Dakotas have their historical endpoint night. They go to museums or are scrapped.
Yeah.
But in terms of
the questionable one is, do the Iowa stick around?
Given we know how they were retained, given the US's penchant for retaining ships generally, just in case, and given that the Stalingrads are still around, for now, they will likely be retained until the Stalingrads officially bow out of Russian service. If not, maybe a little bit longer after that.
Because I'm just thinking, because the push to preserve them only comes in the run up to the Gulf War.
Now here's the thing. It depends. If you get the push for a large navy under Reagan, which since we're still getting Reagan, you probably still will, especially with a larger Soviet fleet. Given there are 6 of them, you probably run them less hard, given you've been able to rotate them more. They probably have the exact same bloody service life in terms of what they get, post, in the Reagan era that they historically had. Especially when you consider that their TSAM throw weight, even building the embiggened strike cruisers, will still be the heaviest fucking TSAM throw weight in the fucking US Navy. And won't be exceeded until fucking VLS Spruance comes online.
Yeah.
So, at that point, given that the Iowas haven't been run quite as hard, and that you've got 6 of them, so you can rotate them a lot better through that process, they are a cheap way to get a fuck ton more missiles to lob at the Soviets and their new carriers. They're basically expendable fucking missile barges, in essence. expensive, but boy, don't
Yeah.
they look good on the fucking. But boy, don't they look good in the pictures. Which is kind of
But-
which is kind of Reagan's whole shtick. Come on, you have to admit that is fucking Reagan's whole bloody shtick.
Some degree, but a lot of the reason why the eye was a refit to that in the first place is because of the lack of modern missile cruisers. If they're getting modern missile cruisers, what does the refitting an Iowa do and getting it working with modern systems? You're gonna have to replace the engines.
No. The funny thing is,
Get you versus.
the funny thing is, none of the Iowas, apart from I think New Jersey, had an engine refresh in their entire careers.
I'm not talking about the engine refresh.
What do you mean?
So they had to do significant modifications to the Iowas when they're refit going into the 90s because they weren't producing enough power. They had to redo a whole bunch of the machinery to increase power output.
I mean, that is
And that's
true.
electrical power.
No, that is
And
true.
that wasn't.
No, that is
And-
true. That is true. But if you're just bringing them back as missile barges, which is a lot less of a comprehensive refit than they actually got, because they got a much more comprehensive refit to make them full on, capable of leading SAGs.
Discount missile cruisers.
Yeah, full SAG facilities. Where if you're just bringing back as an extra magazine of TSAM and Harpoon for a task force, I mean, politely, if that's all you need to do, your generation capacity is just, all right, let's clear out some of these fucking things we're not using and slap in diesel generators and tanks. Because quite frankly, if you only need a bit of burst power to, get your targeting solution and then launch, that's all you need. It's cheap and cheerful. But this is me edge casing how they could be brought back because it's Reagan. Then again, it is Reagan. So, given the way
It's
everything,
Reagan, but he's got strike cruiser. If anything, he'll just get more strike cruiser.
it's
Or
possible.
It's
It's possible, but that is very hard to say. But I am saying it is coming up on 3:50. We're going nearly 4 hours. But I do want to call it because I do want to have a talk with Ghost, with Foxo and Dragon and Guy afterwards in Fleet's Chill Cafe. I need a word with them, given what's going to happen later this week. I need to have a chat with Dragon and Guy, particular Foxo as well.
Okay.
Later this week.
Yes, you'll understand when I tell you what's going on. Thank you everyone for coming. We're not done, obviously. We've still got into the weeds in the 70s, and we need to deal with everything else as well. So we may have another thing on this later down the line. But hope you've enjoyed this little revisitation of something that Fleet works on for ages. Take care, everyone, and I'll catch you